All right. Oh, wait, I need the light. I'm not going to be able to see this. Hang on. I'm getting old. I can't see anything in the dark. Okay.
So we're missing Matt and I think
There's
here he is.
Matt. Indira.
She's
Yep, she's there. We lost Matt. Hi, everybody. So nice to see everybody's shiny face. I love it. There's Matt. He's trying. There he is. Yay. All right. Let's make this bigger. All right. Gallery view. There we go. All right. So, sorry, I got so excited to see everybody. I forgot what we were doing. So I just need, we're going to call to order at, let me just look at my clock here, 6:02 p.m. And I just need a motion to adjourn to open session.
So moved.
All right. And second?
Second.
Great. So I just want to tell everybody that today, sorry, I'm getting lots of weird feedback. Due to the fact that we're on Zoom, we now have to make sure that we're reading every single thing on the agenda. So Erin reminded me. So if it's lengthy that I have to describe everything, forgive me because it's just what we have to do moving forward. So 3.2 report taken in closed session. There was no action taken in closed session. And then we will start with attendance roll call. President Elkishan here, Clerk Reed. Matt, did you say here? No, I'm not frozen again. Okay, let me go to Trustee Lopez Jones.
I'm here.
Trustee Maxfield.
Here.
Trustee Galindo.
Here.
Matt, are you back? We lost Matt.
Here.
Oh, there he is. Okay, perfect. All right. And then I think at this point, Paula might put up our. Remember to mute. Okay. Yay. Okay.
I'm still here.
Great, Matt. So I got that you're here, and now we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I can hear somebody's got something going on their thing, so I just want to see if, okay. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Perfect. And then moving on to 3.5, are there any changes on the agenda, Erin?
No, there's not. Thank you.
Perfect. So we just need a motion to go ahead and approve tonight's agenda.
So moved. So moved. Oh, second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Thank you. Great. And then 3.8, I'm sorry, 3.6, our district mission statement. We are a collaborative, culturally rich educational community where a rigorous and innovative curriculum prepares our students to be successful contributors to our global society. So we're going to start off with recognitions. So he's not with us today, huh? Erin?
I had called him and he was going to try to attempt to log in, but he said his internet is not very good wherever he lives. And so if he couldn't get on, then I just said I would forward him the link to the recorded video and we could still acknowledge him.
So yeah, he's up on Sharp Road. We don't have very good internet up there, as Mark can attest. So, okay, so the Board of Education recognizes students, employees, or members of the community who have received recognition for academic or athletic achievement, or who have made significant contributions of any kind to the district. So today we are recognizing La Prima Pizza for their meal donations to Claro and Claro students over the summer. They really stepped up and helped us fulfill a need to keep a program full and keep everybody fed who is dedicated to this program. And Aldo, who most people here know, who is the owner of La Primo, and his team provided pizzas to our students in need during the shelter-in-place home order. In particular, thank you, Aldo, for your donation of pizzas to the Claro Clara students working with Up Valley Family Center. Those pizzas not only provided a warm meal for students who needed it, but helped foster a sense of normalcy for those students during uncertain times. So the community involvement in Calistoga, I hope it never changes. You will never, ever have a lack of anything you need in this community because of the business owners that continually step up for everything. So thank you, Aldo, and all the staff at La Prima for really contributing and helping our school district with the children. So if anybody else wants to say, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to also, Aldo's a stand-up guy. He's a neighbor of mine. I love him to death, but also you can't mention Aldo without mentioning Betsy. She is the glue, the woman behind the man, and she's a solid person, and I would like to recognize her as Aldo's partner in life and in business.
Great, thank you, Mark, for adding that, for sure. Anybody else before we move on? Okay, so we're sad that he could not be with us, but hopefully when we get back in session in person, perhaps we should do just a quick recap of the recognitions that we did online so that we can actually have pictures and plaques and all that stuff. Okay, 5.1, public business from the floor on non-agendized items. This portion of the agenda allows an individual the opportunity to address the board on any item regarding board business that's not on the agenda. Without taking action or entering into a dialogue with the public, board members can briefly respond to statements made or ask clarifying questions about topics posted by the public. Your matter may be referred to administration, and speakers are limited to 3 minutes. And unless it's somebody on this call, Paula, did we have anything today? Okay, so we're no public comments today. And that puts us into 6.1, which is our public hearing. So protocol for public hearing. As elected governing body of the Calistoga Joint Unified School District, the Board of Trustees conducts public hearings for the purposes of maintaining open communication with parents, students, and residents of Calistoga community and school district. Through the public hearing process, trustees seek ideas and viewpoints regarding the efficiency and quality of district-sponsored programs or any other area of the operation of the district and its schools. The trustees believe that open communication is the key element in an ongoing process of district, school, and program improvement. So 6.2, proposal for implementing school facility fees. So Erin, I'm gonna let Maureen take it, right? Or should I read this first? Okay, so I'm going to pass that on to Maureen. Don't forget to unmute yourself, Miss Hester.
Can we open the public hearing?
Oh, I'm sorry. So we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing at 6:10. Thank you, Paula. And then we'll take comments from the staff. That's you, Maureen.
Do you want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. We have just completed our developer fee justification study. The last study was actually completed in 2016, so it's been about 4 years since we have done this as a district. The purpose of the study is to demonstrate the relationship between residential, commercial, and industrial growth, and then the need for the modernization of school facilities within Calistoga School District. So the study needs to be completed every time the state allows for an increase in developer fees. And back in January, the state did increase developer fees up to $4.08 a square foot. We were not charging that much at that time because we couldn't. The state had a cap on it. And so we did this study to be able to increase our fee from $348 to $408 per square foot. Of course, the study goes through looking at what modernization needs are in place for our school district. And then it looks at the potential development for within the community of Calistoga. And from there, student generation rates are established by the community development, by what's going on in that community development. So if there is development occurring, whether it's residential or commercial, there's an assumption that students will increase and enrollment will increase at the district. Doesn't always happen that way, but that is the way the justification study is done. So Jack Schrader and Associates went through the whole study and they did come up with some findings. The first finding was the district's current total capacity will diminish over time if the district does not modernize its facilities. So obviously, as we continue to have children going to school, we need to make sure that the facilities they're in are safe and modern for their education. Based on the district's, this is the second finding, based on the district's modernization needs and the generation of students through development, the district is justified in charging up to $4.22 per square foot for level 1 developer fees. Right now, the state's maximum is $4.08 a square foot, but it's good to know that we still can even go higher than that if needed when the state does raise that rate again. So like I said, on January 22nd, the state approved a rate of $4.08. So the district will be using that rate 60 days from now. And we can't charge more than that rate, even though we qualify for $4.22 a square foot. We're also justified in charging the 66-cent commercial rate, and that will be set as that was set as an approved rate by the state as well. And that's an increase of 5 cents for commercial property for us. We don't really see a whole lot of commercial property, but we can increase that as well. There is a 60-day waiting period after the board adopts the resolution, which is later on in the agenda tonight. This 60 days allows time for us to notify planning departments of the different counties around us, and then also for developers to get the notice that the fee has increased. If the board does decide to sign this resolution tonight to increase the fees, this will take effect around October 13th, 2020. And if the board has any questions, it would be my pleasure to answer.
So did you say we could charge up to $4.22 a square foot?
We can if the state approves that rate. So right now the state's only approved $4.08 a square foot. The state kind of goes through ins and outs of yearly approvals, and then sometimes they skip a year. It just kind of depends. So right now their maximum cap that we can charge as a school district has been set at $4.08. But if they go in January to and say, oh, you can increase it to $4.15, we can actually do that without having to do a whole nother justification study because we're justified at the $4.22. Any other questions?
Might be a silly question, but I was looking at, you know, the residential construction and reconstruction at 4.08, but then you say new commercial, and it doesn't talk about reconstruction of commercial buildings. Is that, and I mean, I see the big difference on fees, you know, so can you enlighten me a little bit about this? Why is not considering reconstruction or improvement to commercials?
There are all kinds of stipulations on what can be charged for a commercial developer fee and what can't. So the majority of developer 1 level fees are just residential. I'll give you an example of a commercial space. If somebody wanted to build a new rental of office space in downtown Calistoga, we can charge commercial fees for that. Commercial fees get more intense as you go up into how you collect, so different levels of collection. Level 1 is just pretty much residential, and there's not a whole lot of complication to the commercial part of it.
If I could clarify a little bit. So in residential as opposed to commercial, a resident will bring a student to the town, and so the impact would be to the school district. Now, if a commercial wants a mixed use and there's a resident living in there, and then the fees would be adjusted for the impact of the resident and potential student. And that's how the variations in the price.
Correct, Mark. And there's a different generation rate for a commercial property that generates a student versus a residential rate. So a residential rate assumes a certain generation, a certain amount of students are going to come from that one house. And then commercial rate is almost, it's not even a full student. So it's a different rate of generation.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, anybody else? Questions on that? Okay. Okay, so that at this point, we are going to then close, right, Paula? At 6:16 p.m. Let me unmute that. Okay. So, oh wait, did I skip something? No, 6.2. Sorry, my agenda's out of order.
And 6.3.
Oh no, actually, it didn't even print that page.
It's our summer program presentation.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and go to that, and then in between that time, while Joel is professionally presenting that, I'll figure out why my page didn't print. So I'll go ahead and throw to Joel, who can go ahead and give us the rundown on the summer program.
We're at presentations, and it's 7.1 school resource officer program.
Oh, okay.
with Mitch.
I didn't see Mitch. He just popped in there.
Yes.
Hi, Mitch.
Where's Mitch? Is he in there? Oh, there he is. Okay, the timing is good, and gosh, look at his background. It's so nice.
Muted, Mitch, you're muted, so
Yeah.
there you go.
How's that?
There you go.
Everybody can hear me?
Yeah. So do I just throw to Mitch? I'm so sorry, you guys. I have to pull up my agenda again. Is there any? Oh, here we go. Sorry, Mitch. I am missing a page of my agenda. Oh, perfect. Okay. So we're presenting Mitch Calistoga, Police Chief, who's going to discuss the potential of our School Resource Officer program. Go ahead, Mitch. It's to you.
Great. So I know I only have about 10 minutes, so I'll try to keep it very direct and brief. So I really have two things I want to cover. So given all that's going on in the world today, there's a lot of communities that are re-looking at school resource officers as far as whether they're going to allow them on campus or participate in those kinds of programs. And so I just want to make sure, and I had a conversation with Aaron, that we are still good to go, that we see the value in a school resource officer program, because the tobacco grant, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, is based on the school resource officer. That's who we're going to use to help qualify the needs of the grant. So I don't need an answer right now. But that's one question I need to make sure that we're good to go. And then I'd like to transition into the actual grant and let you know what that is about. So, and here I go. In the summer of July of 2019, I submitted a grant through the Department of Justice tobacco grant process. It's a grant in which it specifically addresses the harm or threats, the health and safety to students. And so when I wrote the grant, again, it was in July of 2019. And the problem statement was pretty clear. It was basically stating that we were seeing an increased level of, we were seeing a progressively decreased perceived fear or harm by students on tobacco use. And the numbers I used were from the California 2018 Healthy Kids Survey. And in that survey, there was a dramatic drop in student perception of harm for the use of tobacco products, as well as a even more significant drop in harm for students utilizing vape type materials, the vaping, whether it was marijuana, but specifically tobacco. And so what this survey showed was that in 2016, 78% of the students saw that there was a perceived harm, that tobacco use was not good for them. Fast forward to 2018, that dropped down to 58%, where students were seeing not so much a harm. there was a more dramatic decrease in the use of vaping materials. In 2016, students saw 49% of the students saw harm in using vape products. But in 2018, that dropped down to 19%. So below 20% of our students in Calistoga, now these are Calistoga students, these aren't, we're not looking outside our community. So a drop in the perceived harm. Now that in conjunction with what we saw over the last year and a half with all the issues with vaping, some of the medical health issues that are going on, well, not just students, but also young adults. This was also, I also discussed not only is this a trend, but also our demographics. So when you look at our student population here in Calistoga, you know, we have close to 80% of our students are socioeconomically disadvantaged. And that in itself makes them high risk for the use of substance abuse, whether it's tobacco products and or drugs or alcohol. So that was the basis for the grant. I was successful in the grant. It was drafted in the means that we would have a school resource officer that would take this project on, and they would address some goals and some strategies to address the specific tobacco issue. But as a school resource officer, they can do other things, you know, mentoring programs, you know, they can deal with drug issues, they can deal with other kinds of behavior. So the city council's approved accepting the grant. The grant that we got was for $472,000, a little bit more than that. It started in December 1st of 2019, and it ends June 30th of 2022. But because I haven't been able to present this to the board, and we had the pandemic, and then we had staffing issues, I'm hoping to get this off the ground for the fall. The way this was going to get addressed, again, was through a school resource officer that was going to tackle the goals of implementing a program to increase student awareness on harm of tobacco products, conduct officer and staff training as far as the legalities and issues associated with that, conduct educational outreach and tobacco enforcement, and target educating not only the faculty and staff, but also the parents, because we are going to try to take a holistic view to addressing this issue. And then on top of that was retailer education and retailer enforcement. And we're pretty lucky. I think we have maybe 6 retailers in Calistoga, but to make sure they're on board to try to minimize the use of tobacco products for our students. So the 5 goals are really focused on those points that I just discussed. I'm willing to answer any questions for you, but the idea is to use a school resource officer that won't be 100% on campus. They're actually going to work patrol and the school, because we're going to be doing an enforcement effort outside. And so they're either going to coordinate this effort or they're going to do it themselves. And I know that's a lot in 6 minutes, but I'm trying to keep under the 10-minute time limit. Go ahead.
I first wanted to say Calistoga is so fortunate to have you here. Calistoga's first ever police chief of color. You're a great guy. It's fun to talk to you. Every time I see you, I get good feelings. And the work that you're doing, you're a stand-up guy, man. We're very fortunate to have you. And so my concern is, I have a few questions, but overall my biggest concern is, are students becoming vilified? What types of uniforms will these officers be wearing? Will they be in there, as you just mentioned, will they be armed? With everything that's going on in the world today, the idea of repurposing funds and whatnot, that being set aside, my caution is, will this turn into something else, like other school districts, like Oakland, like Stockton Unified, where their school police force has a bigger budget than their academic needs. And so I definitely don't want to villainize our students, but I also want them to be aware of the tobacco hazards out there. And And so my concerns are with the weapons. Some kids are fascinated at first ever time seeing a gun, and then they're just fixated on the gun. And so these school districts that I've mentioned before, they are not similar to Calistoga. And so the concern with me is that, say you leave somebody else, and then all of a sudden our students are vilified, and that there's a disconnect between people of students of color and maybe a law enforcement that perceive threats or whatnot that is out there, but doesn't pertain to our district. And my concern is that this does not expand past tobacco concerns.
Yeah. No, Mark, I hear what you're saying, and I can very much appreciate, some of the concerns. I think Calistoga is a unique environment compared to some of these other jurisdictions, whether it's Oakland or LA or some of these larger urban environments. To answer your question, the officers, they're police officers, so they will be armed. Because it's what I'm going to see as kind of like part-time, they're going to be in uniform, but there'll be times where they'll be in polo shirts. But because they're officers, they're always going to have a weapon. Now, right now, we do a DARE program, and that officer wears, sometimes she's in uniform and sometimes she's in a polo shirt. Most of the time she's in a uniform. So the students get used to, well, I've not seen where they've taken any issue with that. We have a mentoring program that the police department has with the high school. Every year, I personally do a presentation in full uniform to address drugs, alcohol, smoking, sexting, those kinds of things. It's not meant to vilify. It's meant to develop rapport and relationships and some trust. And one thing about a school resource officer is that, it has to happen over time. We're pretty fortunate, because of our environment. I think that, we can develop those trust and rapport a lot quicker. Our students are very open to the officers. They come up to them. I get hugs all the time when I go to the schools, but I think it's how we approach the students. And it's about educating them, having them make informed decisions, particularly the high school students. Maybe the elementary, it's a little different approach, but we are police officers, and so they will be armed, operating in whatever fashion they're going to do, whether they're in polo shirts or whether they're in uniform. So I don't know how much more to kind of address your concerns. And I have a young staff. And here's the other thing, I have extremely young staff that's very diverse. I have 3 Latino officers. I have half my officer staff are women. I have 40% of people of color, officers of color. So I think that helps break down some barriers for that. I've been to a couple presentations with the Teen Center. I think I'm more intimidated of them than they are of me. So hopefully I can kind of address some of your concerns.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Mitch, like I said, you do a phenomenal job. Our kids love you. I'm not just concerned if this turns into something else. And I'm all for law enforcement. When something happens, I definitely want to be able to call somebody and police show up. If there's a need for somebody to protect our students with a firearm, I definitely want a police officer to be armed. I'm just concerned. I don't want this to turn into anything else.
Well, here's actually an important factor that I actually was remiss. This is a partnership with the schools, which means that I'll be working, and the school resource officer will be working closely with the principals or the vice principals or the superintendent. And if for some reason these concerns come up, we should be able to address them right then and there. I think it's a partnership. I can't make this happen. We're kind of guests on the campus is the way I kind of see it, and we get called to campus all the time. And I don't know if the principal of the high school or the vice principal's on, but I think that we have a great working relationship. The same officers that deal with them on a day-to-day, one of them are going to be the school resource officer. And they get, like I said, they get called to campus on a semi-regular basis. And most of the time we handle it in a very informal manner. And we'll be working closely with our juvenile diversion coordinator, who will continue to work. And I see them working hand in hand with the juvenile diversion officer, as well as the school staff and the principals.
If I can chime in, a very good example of the working relationship between the SRO and the different programs that do prevention of tobacco and marijuana use and our diversion program is, San Helena Unified. We have a very, very strong relationship with the police department and the resource officer that she has become, a very great ally on working with the students on prevention programs and also working with the students who are already under a contract, with the diversion program. So it is a plus to have, someone that, if you will, represents, the system that we don't want, the students don't want to necessarily, fall under. So I think it's important that we have that relationship. And I have a question for Chief Zelaya. Have you identified an officer yet for this position? And when are you thinking about starting?
Well, so the answer is I have not identified an officer right now. And I think to start, I'll probably have 2 officers share the position. But when we identify an officer, I would get input from the school staff, either probably the principal from both schools or the vice principals from both, just so they feel comfortable and they have input into the officer that they're hopefully going to see more and more on campus, or at least interacting with the students.
First, before Raul, sorry, Eric, did you have something?
I was just going to mention that it's semantics maybe, but I know other schools in other districts are using it as a student resource officer instead of school resource officer. It kind of changes the perspective and takes the emphasis off of they're working for the school and makes it more that they're working for the students. So you might, officially SROs is the school resource, but if we kind of phrase it as a student resource, it kind of lends it to be that more friendly vibe.
Yeah, I think that is not an issue.
Yeah.
I was just going to mention that, Chief Zelaya has had conversations with us already about being part of the selection process, or not necessarily selection process, but at least having a say into that choice. But also, in my experience of working with SRO at Montgomery High School and at LC Holland High School, I really see it as a really good way to really bridge that communication gap that sometimes there exists between police officers and youth, and having an officer there that really walks the campus, can check in on students and approaches things differently, really cements that relationship of communication. And sometimes they even get to do, tours with the officers as a career choice to the police. But also just because they know the students and they know the families, they have, that's really, when we do have issues that police have to be involved, then they take that extra care, the extra touch that you could say, then bringing somebody from the street, an officer from the street that doesn't know our community or our campus, and then sometimes has that harsh approach. So I really support this program, especially now, I have heard some of those conversations about other districts trying to not have resource officers, but I think this is really an important time to bring them on board just to continue the conversation and communication.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mitch.
Well, I think one of the things that makes us different than other communities, so I have 8 officers, and because we're so small, the community is small, everybody knows each other, that it's not like larger agencies where you put a school resource officer and that's the first time they've ever seen them, and they don't see them on a regular basis. In our case, I would say, except for the officers that work the graveyard and midnight shift, and know many of the officers.
I guess I had a question for Raul. As it's a partnership with the Calistoga PD. How our restorative circle and our just that whole, how would that apply here? Say, I understand there's some crimes that are zero tolerance incidents, weapons, drugs, but like a cigarette, I understand this is to prevent that. But how can we lessen the damage to a kid who makes a foolish choice in these areas that are not so criminal.
So that's something that we've already been working on, taking a restorative approach to the way we do discipline, right? From the reflection piece that students do when they are sent to the office, to the also looking at other alternatives to just the suspension piece, and doing the restorative circles instead. So an officer there, as part of that conversation, just brings a little bit more power, a little bit more seriousness to the matter. So I would welcome that approach.
You have my support, Mitch. I think this will be beneficial to our campus.
So Mark, I just want to add is that, so the juvenile diversion coordinator, you know, is a police program. It's what the police department pays for that program to offer it. So those lesser crimes, whether it's like vandalism or trespassing or, you know, possession of marijuana or something like that, are handled through a juvenile diversion process. And our process is unique in Napa County in that it is a pre-court process. If you go to Napa, the kid gets cited, they go to juvenile court, there's a record, and then they get remanded or they get referred for juvenile diversion. We do it differently. The officers take the case, they recommend juvenile diversion. They're not even in the system. They go through juvenile diversion. The juvenile diversion coordinator meets with the parents. They do a contract, it's voluntary. There typically involves, depending on what the issue is, anger management, some social justice thing. There's community service, so they can get back to the community, and that's to bypass the criminal justice process. And so it's kind of like a freebie in some regards to put the kid back on the right path, mentor them in a non-criminal justice process.
I just want to commend Mitch because I've been doing this for, I don't know, 10 years now. And since he came on board, the positive presence in the town and in the school is so noticeable. And the way I always think about a community, Indira, help me, a community-based school. You know what I'm saying? We've been doing that all along in that we as a community wrap all of our services around our kids and our families. And this is just another way that we can do that. And I always think the presence on the campus is so positive. I mean, I have seen Mitch at many a career day. We've been doing them for like, how long have you been here? 7 years, Mitch?
Yep, since 2013.
Yeah, so we've been doing this with him for a long time, and the kids flock to Mitch like moths to a flame. And I just loved that they have so much exposure to that in the community and that it's always been a very positive force. And we're lucky for that, especially when you see what's going on in the rest of the nation. We have embraced all of our different services as part of our community, and I think we're all here for the better good of the kids. So thank you, full support here, and I think I can speak for probably everybody.
Great, enough. I could forward the actual tobacco grant. It gives not only the problem statement, but the goals and a little bit of the meat as far as the things that we're going to try to achieve through the program, if that helps.
Julie, the next step would also be for us to bring it back an MOU to the board. So perhaps Mitch and I can work on that.
Does the grant cover the full cost?
I think what Matt said was, Matt, you were cutting in and out. Does the grant cover the full cost of the program?
It does, and then some of the things that I'm committed to.
And does the grant cover the full cost on campus?
Matt, say it one more time. You were cutting in and out. Just give it to us one more time.
Right. I'm sorry, my internet is not behaving. No, I was just asking, and I think I've heard the answer, but I was just asking if the grant covers the full cost of the SRO's presence on campus. And maybe that went through or not.
I'll go ahead and throw it to Mitch. I think he's back there.
Sorry, I think my internet is failing. Okay.
Go ahead, Mitch.
I'm not on sharp road, but I feel like I am.
Julie, do you want to ask Mitch what Matt?
Yeah, I think Mitch heard. I think what Matt is asking is if the grant is covering the full cost of the program. So go ahead, Mitch.
Yes, the grant is covering the whole cost of the program. There are some costs that I'm anticipate that I will pick up. I'm not asking for any funding from the school district for this grant phase.
Perfect. And Mitch, I mean, eventually, do you see it developing into other types of resources that you can bring to the school? I mean, this is one thing, but I think it's just so great to have you push onto the campus. And
well, this is going to be a kind of an exciting program, and that we're going to develop it as we go along, and hopefully we'll morph this into something much larger. It's going to be it's happening during some challenging times, with the pandemic and the online stuff. We clearly have to take another look at how we do some of our outreach, some of our education, some of our training, things like that, because everything is virtual now. So it's going to, it's going to change a little bit how we're doing it. The enforcement piece will probably stay the same. And when I say enforcement, that's retailer, that's outside. I'm talking about retailer enforcement.
anybody else have any comments, concerns, questions? Okay, great. Thank you, Mitch. We will look forward to the MOU that you develop together and bring back to us September, do you think, Erin?
Yeah, that's the intent.
Okay, perfect. Mitch, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your time. And if any of the board members have questions, feel free to have them reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to share a little more detail. I'll provide, if I didn't already, the grant to Erin, and she can share that as appropriate. But again, thank you very much for your support. And I'll be back in the office on Monday the 17th. So
Perfect.
you'll have a great week.
Mitch, you're welcome to stay on for the rest of the meeting, but I kind of doubt you don't want to. So thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Take care.
Okay, so we are now moving to 7.2 for the summer program. So Michael's going to give us a little rundown first, and then Joel is going to chime in, and then I don't know if we've got Carla, but maybe we'll have Carla.
I don't think so, Julie.
No? Oh, okay. So yeah, Carla's out a little under the weather. So we will start with Michael.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I can give a brief introduction. I'd say it was a very interesting summer. This was a purely virtual summer school program, which presents opportunities and challenges. And we, for the first time, used Aries for summer school. Typically what happens is that the information from summer school, especially our high school students, the courses they take, the grades that they get, is kind of kept on a paper pencil basis. And then our school secretaries at the high school in the fall enter that information to Aries. And it's I think challenging for them to start a new school year, but then have to devote a portion of their time to entering summer school information. So it makes sense to use Aries in the summer, though it was quite a lift and something we hadn't done before. So it required, I'd say this summer, more than anyone, it required a lot of problem solving and a lot of stick-to-itiveness. I'm very glad we had Joel at the helm to guide us through it. Ultimately, we provided services to students, and Joel will speak to the level of support our students got. But I think it's worth pointing out that it was an interesting challenge this summer. And Joel, we thank you for all your efforts. I know he worked doubly hard to make sure that things work smoothly for the staff and for the students. So thank you, Joel, for all your work. And with that, I'll step aside and Joel will share a little more detail.
Thank you, Michael. All right, and I believe I'm gonna put up a slideshow here in a moment, and I can just walk us through that. But glad to be here today. Thank you. Paula, were you gonna project? You are, okay. Perfect, thank you so much. So just a little bit of background on the 2019-2020 summer school program. As Michael said, we did this entirely virtual. So it was an interesting summer, and it required a lot of hard work and teamwork, but we did it, and we have provided some great education for our students. So next page, please. Okay, so similar to previous years, as far as our focus, we had our elementary and junior high focus were to support them in additional reading and writing, mathematics, and even give a preview of the students' following year's curriculum to kind of give them a jump start on what they might be seeing as they come into the new school year. This year, we had a new class called Bridges to Success by Carla Serber, and the focus there was for study skills, and these were for students who were going to be entering high school in the fall. And happy to say that this was a new addition to the program, and it actually filled a grade level gap from previous summer programs. So I was really happy that we were able to get that in there, and Carla did a fantastic job. We'll get into that a little bit more shortly. As far as the high school, our focus was credit recovery and A through G, and feel free if anyone has a comment or a question as we go. A through G to make up units that they need for graduation, and we use Apex exclusively, which is the online curriculum. And as mentioned earlier, due to the COVID-19, all the instruction was given using distance learning this summer, which was, to my knowledge, the first ever in CJUSD history. So we made history this summer. Summer school hours, so we had for the majority of the students, they were in there from June 18th to July 9th, and that was 15 days of instruction. And it was about a 3-hour workday, and that included 1 hour of live instruction by each teacher for their class per day. And then for our ESY program, that went about close to an extra week. That was June 18th through the 15th. That was 4 hours a day, and that was a total of 19 school days. Thank you, Paula. So we had, here's our student attendance data, and we had 278 students initially enrolled. 270 enrolled at the enrolled at the conclusion, and our average weekly attendance was 71, 58%, 69, and 53, with a total instructional hours of 8,073. And I'm going to address those attendance numbers here in just a second on the next slide. So if you notice that the attendance numbers were a bit low, a little bit of background on that. We didn't have a full-time secretary the first few days of summer school, and so there was some ARIES permissions, technical difficulties, and so on. So those numbers, in my opinion, were quite a bit higher than what's resulted there. We had some students who signed up for summer school but never attended, and some students who finished summer school early on Apex and actually stopped going to class because they had completed their work. And so because of things like that, those numbers from students who either never came in at all or left early, those were taken into account for part of the percentages, and that's why they were brought down some. But again, it was a learning curve with ARIES. To encourage the best attendance we can get, from day one, we did phone calls home personally by summer school secretary. We did, then we also went to all calls. So any student who wasn't marked present on ARIES, they were given automatic phone call that afternoon explaining that student had missed that day of school and they should be there the following day. And just a quick note, attendance, those attendance numbers were based on the largest chunk from 6/18 to July 9th. And didn't include the last week of ESY. Okay, and this is a little hard to see there, but the black line at the top is our total enrollment, And then the green line towards the top, that was basically our basic daily attendance. So, and I kind of focus on the middle portion of the screen there. The ones on the end are kind of the startup and the endings of the program, but the green in the middle there is the focus. And as I said, those numbers were, in my opinion, significantly higher, just based on adding and dropping and removing students from areas who didn't need to be in a class. Okay, and because those APEX teachers were working so hard to facilitate, credit recovery for their students, we required them to fill out progress reports. So any students who weren't at 50% of the course completion by halfway through the program, it was required that teachers send home a progress report to students and their families to let them know that, hey, they need to, that they're in danger of not getting that credit. So that was really important to notify the families, and we had some really good success. So high school credit recovery, for APEX, we had 69 APEX classes that were given, and out of those 69, we had actually a really high percentage there. 66 classes were actually recovered. So those are going straight to students who are trying to either improve their grades or going to help them graduate. Okay, so again, it was a great summer. There was a lot of growth, and it was a team effort. So got some improvements and celebrations to mention. Just a few things moving forward for next year. I would suggest that summer school administration and summer school secretary would be given some time in addition to their few work days before actual summer school. But some days in April and May, maybe where they were given a substitute to fill their position for a few days, where the principal and secretary can sit in a room and just hash out the front end details of summer school, because there's quite a bit to do, and I think that would be a great thing moving forward. Another, because APEX and this credit recovery is so important to those high school students, I think my opinion would be helpful, just some additional collaboration and communication between the high school administration and the summer school administration, as far as helping students who, I guess you could say, need it most, as far as graduation and units before the school year ends, which is really difficult because I know high school, there's so much going on at the end of a school year. But I think just tying up some loose ends for the most needy students who would be in summer school before the actual school year ends would best benefit those students who are most in need. Oh, and then one last thing, if possible, I put there, if there was a liaison, and Michelle Craig Morales was so unbelievably helpful. But if there was a liaison who was contracted between the last day of the school year and the first day of summer school, there's a lot of kind of backfill and transcript checking and things like that. So any additional support from contracted support would I think also really help the moving wheels of summer school a bunch. Thank you. Now, as far as celebrations, tons to share. I saw my staff grow a ton just in their distance learning methods, some programs like Seesaw and Nearpod, and I had some of the administrators, the full-time administrators, email me saying, wow, I just got an email from a parent about this teacher, and they were so excited about, their child was so excited to be in their class and how well they did. So I got lots of great feedback from the professionalism and the content from the teachers this summer. There was virtually no discipline issues other than one that was related to a non-summer school student. As I mentioned, super organized professional staff. They were there every day. And as Michael said, lots of problem solving needed to happen, and they were all, right there to jump in as needed. So another celebration, as I mentioned, 66 classes were successfully recovered for those high school students. And I think it was really important for that Bridges Success program to come into play. And I hope that something along these lines, if not the same program, continues in the future for those incoming high school students. And one last page of celebrations there. Melinda Mendoza, she was not the summer school secretary, but she acted as one for the good chunk of the beginning of summer school, and she was super helpful. And even in addition to continuing all of her normal duties, she jumped in there and was fantastic. And then Judy Hernandez, she came in a few days after summer school began as secretary, and just kind of hit the ground running and just kind of like did what we needed to have happen. She's a great communicator. She planned, she problem solved. So Judy, she's not here right now, but she was really, really great. And then Michael, I won't make you blush, but thanks, man, for jumping in there, and you're so easy to communicate with, and just able to reach out at a moment's notice. And thank you for your positive communication in the name of the student. So much appreciated. Any questions about anything from the summer?
Yeah, I would have to agree with you about Michael. He is easy to talk to, and he's very descriptive in his response to questions. Good job, Michael. I would also like to say, good job, Mr. Kreiner. Summer school program has improved. Not to say that since you arrived, not that the previous principals did a horrible job, but your focus and your ability to work without a secretary and just all that you've done, good job, thumbs up. Raul, I have a question, and as well as Bridges to Success, that is great news. My question is, this collaboration with the summer school and the high school, junior high, that's pretty important. And when will this collaboration happen? And what type of assessments do we have on students? A lot of the workshops I've been to say that we should be reaching these students at least 4 to 5 times, quarterly, semester, and then at the end, when so that way they are aware of their progress or their need for credit recovery or whatnot. Do we meet with these students 4 to 5 times? And if we don't, can we? And as far as some of the things that he mentioned, does College and Career handle any of this area?
We absolutely meet with them, Mark. We have parent meetings that we schedule as students start to go down on their credits or on their grades. We keep notes, we do SSTs, we continue to talk to them through the spring, and then we, of course, then ask them to enroll for summer school, recommend them for summer school or credit recovery when they didn't end up passing their classes. It did create a little bit with, of course, being off campus in the spring, but we still try to do Zoom meetings with students and make sure that they understood about where they were and their standings. Michelle does a wonderful job, and again, Monica and myself, we divided basically the alphabet into 3, and we met with the students and gave them a plan for improvement, continued to meet with them with their families, and did that throughout the spring.
Yeah, I know a lot of these things that which you referenced, they're accredited to you being here as well as Monica. I'm very excited to see the progress that the students make under your leadership. Is the number 4 to 5 times, or is it less than that?
I would say four times.
Great.
And this is just also, Mark, this is just from the office communication, right? The teachers are sending communications home, reaching out to parents as well, doing interventions. So there's a lot of in terms of what happens in the office, it's for about 4 times in the spring. But what goes on in the classroom is actually probably even more when they're continually meeting with the students and trying to make them do their work and communicating home.
Great. I just want to say thank you to Joel because again, just watching people pivot into the throes of COVID and having to have everything go online, you did an amazing job. So thank you so much for that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Julie, Carla had intended
Yes.
a video that she wanted to narrate. So I'd like to bring that back to the board at the September meeting so that she can do that because she put a lot of time into it. And she can explain the Bridges program.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah.
Perfect. That'll give us something fun to look forward to for the next meeting. Great. Okay. Sorry. Back to where we're at. Okay. Joel, thank you so much. And moving on to 7.3, thank you, Eric, our co-athletic director, who's going to provide us with an update on the modifications of our athletics program.
Yes, we're talking COVID a little bit ago here, and COVID, of course, affects everything. And we're going to discuss some of the changes that are happening to the 2020 school year athletic program. I need to re-click on my link here. It goes away when the screen share comes up. Okay, so the second slide there talks about what's going to be happening in the traditional fall season. And the fall season has been postponed. So we will not be playing fall sports in August and September as normal. The start date for the sports that are on our screen here, the football, volleyball, cross country, sideline cheer, and tentatively soccer, I'll get to that more in a minute, will not begin until December 14th, which is actually the first day of our final exam week, which is another bit of an issue that we'll struggle with, making sure we have time for kids to be working on their final exam preparation and taking their tests and such. But that also then leads us into winter break for a couple weeks, 3 weeks. And then when we come back after winter break, all those teams will begin having gameplay and traveling to other schools and such. So much different than normal. The soccer consideration, most of California plays soccer in the winter. North Coast section, which we're a part of, has 2 different soccer federations. They play a fall season, which we are a part of in the past and have traditionally been. Then they also have a winter season that most of the larger schools participate in that allows them to have a state championship in soccer. We don't participate in that state championship level soccer. We play the fall season. We do have a North Coast section champion title, but we don't move on to play other schools from the South area. So what came about with the North Coast section and with our conference is that we would like to keep our soccer teams, our girls and boys, playing in what we're now calling season 1, the traditional fall season that we would be playing if everything was normal. That has to be voted on by the North Coast section Board of Managers. And so we have to wait until October 3rd when they have their next meeting. Our conference, that's the Coastal Mountain Conference, the Bay Counties League, and the Humboldt Del Norte League are the 3 that come together to make that fall season. So in my opinion, if 2 out of 3 at least of those conferences ask for this change, which 2 already have, I don't know of the 3rd yet, but I know the Bay County League and our league, our conference, have asked for that change to happen. I'm hoping that that will come true. And so we will be playing our fall season, or our season 1 teams playing soccer as they traditionally would in the fall. And we can switch to the next slide and talk about season 2. Traditionally, we have fall, winter, and spring. This year we have season 1, season 2. And so this is where it gets pretty tricky because, as you see, we have everything happening at the same time outside of that first season. So if voted down, soccer will also be a spring sport now, but hopefully we don't have to worry about that. Tennis and swimming will begin on March 8th, and basketball, track and field, and baseball, softball will begin on March 15th. So most of these teams would be starting in the spring in February or March. The big difference being that now basketball, one of our winter sports, traditionally will be happening at the same time. A lot of the larger schools also have wrestling happening and badminton and many other things. We don't offer that full regimen in our section, in our conference, but we will be having basketball the same time as tennis and swimming and track and baseball, softball. So this puts a little bit of a restriction on some of our students to make a choice on which activities they're going to participate in. If you want to move to the next slide, we'll keep going here. There are some talking points. These are just ideas to throw out there. The Coastal Mountain Conference, which are the 26 or so teams that we participate in, most of the small schools. The fall schedules are all set, the league schedules, so we know who we're playing in football and volleyball and those things. The commissioner is actively working on and has released a couple of the sports for the season 2, but we don't have all of that done yet. We'll get that in the next couple weeks. We have a meeting on the 24th and another on the 31st of August here that will give us more information. Some of the difficulties that we're concerned about, depending upon how long the county restrictions go, is that our conference covers 7 and sometimes 8 counties, depending on which sport we're playing. So it may be that, you know, Humboldt County is fine and they want to play everything and they can travel and do everything, but that we are not able to. And so that makes a big confusion. We aren't sure what will happen there. It could be that Lake County does something different than we do, or Marin County or Sonoma County. So a lot of it's going to come down to the county health officer and what he or she recommends for the schools in their county. There will likely be spectator restrictions, travel restrictions. You know, how do we put kids in a van if we can't get 6 feet of, you know, social distancing? How do we let parents come in but nobody else to spectate the games? Do we not allow any spectators at all for football or for volleyball and soccer, things like that? How do we manage that on the sidelines? Those are all questions that we have for ourselves and for the conference and the North Coast section as well. Another concern, especially for the springtime, is what the availability of officials will be. With all the schools playing basketball and softball and baseball and all those things at the same time, many of the officials do more than one sport. And so will they be available to come and help us as they have been in the past? Also, the winter time, you know, in January and February when we're playing football and soccer, we don't have the daytime light that allows us to play into the afternoon more. So games will likely be starting much earlier, maybe 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, soccer matches and things like that, when we don't have lights at Logby Field. And so our officials available because of that. You know, they're working a traditional job and then doing sports afterward. Can they still come and help us with that? A lot of our conference and Ms. Owens and I have talked about how do we manage winter break practices, if students and their families are traveling, or you know, final exam schedule, things like I talked about. You know, our football team needs to have at least 10 days of full contact practice before they can have any scrimmages and things, and so we'll have to work on some of those issues as well. The right side of the screen there, the North Coast section and the California Interscholastic Federation, our state body, playoffs and championships are planned and expected to completely happen the way they normally would, just having season 1 and season 2 only. A couple changes that they have allowed is that multiple sports will be allowed for our student athletes. So if somebody would like to be playing football, and that season usually would go, or is planned to go until about the middle of April with playoffs and such, but yet basketball and baseball are already starting. The North Coast section and the CIF have allowed students to play more than one season at the same time and more than one sport at the same time, which was not the case in the past. So that allows our students to do that, but there are maximums on play and practice per week of 18 hours. So coaches and Louise and I will make sure to monitor that and keep track of that really closely so that we don't overextend any of our student athletes and they're not, you know, hopefully we're back in school at that time in the spring or the second semester, and we don't want them missing too much class time as well, traveling potentially 5 days a week for sports. Some of our students play a club sport that's not part of school, and that has never been allowed to happen at the same time as their regular season would be. So for example, if somebody played on a you know, Napa United soccer team and they traveled all over going to state cup tournaments, they could not play on the high school team at the same time. But now they are allowing that to happen because of the change of seasons. A transfer may be allowed. In the past, you could not just switch from one school to the other for sports without a special petition on file. They are now allowing students to transfer, but only if a school is not fielding a team. So a hypothetical situation would be Calistoga is just spread too thin and we are not going to have tennis, for example. I just randomly chose one. We don't have enough kids that are wanting to play tennis because they want to play baseball or softball or track and everything, just, we don't have enough to go around. So, but we have a diehard tennis student that really wants to play. They could then potentially transfer to St. Helena or Middletown or somewhere else to play that season because we're not offering that sport at this time. Without restriction, they can transfer. And students could also come into our school if other schools are not having that as well. So we'll be able to monitor that closely. I don't expect a lot of that here in Calistoga, but the possibility is allowed by the section now where it never was before. And as I mentioned before, season 2, because it's starting later, school will probably finish. We'll have graduation and such prior to some of the state championships and playoffs happening. So if our baseball team is doing really well and we finish school early June, they may need to play until June 15th if they continue to do well and move on to the playoffs. So we'll make sure to be careful about that as well and monitor how that all works out. And we have one more slide. I think it's the last slide. So this is our junior high situation here, our North Valley League that we're a part of. The first season, which is co-ed soccer, cross country, co-ed as well, and then girls basketball, that has been officially canceled by the league commissioner and the voting members of the league. So those sports will not be happening for our junior high. The winter season, they haven't decided if they're going to do a everything happens in spring situation like the high school does. But the winter season that includes basketball, volleyball, basketball for boys and volleyball for girls. We meet on October 7th. And if everything is going well and students are back in school and the county restrictions have been lifted or lessened, the start date would be October 26th, which is what it traditionally would be. If things are still doing poorly health-wise, when we meet on October 7th, some decisions will be made and proposals on whether we continue that season and do it in the springtime or whether that season is also canceled. And I didn't write it on the slide, but the only sport we participate in the spring for the North Valley Junior High League is the co-ed track and field. And we'll just have to wait and see what the restrictions or what the limitations are if we're able to do that as we get closer to February or March. So that's a lot of information, but oh, there's more. I'm sorry. I had some more here I didn't think about. I forgot this slide. So as Louise and I usually do, we will have the students sign in and check up on Family ID. Sports physicals are still required, and that may be a bit of a difficulty because of hospitals and doctors being set back on what they have available for appointments. But since we're not starting until December, we have a lot of time to prepare our families for that. Student grades will still be checked. We have the same grade requirements we've had last year with the CIF rules. So at quarter 1, semester 1, and quarter 3, we will be checking student grades and student demerits as well. We probably won't have the same situation in distance learning or hybrid learning that we've had in the past, but we want to make sure that students are being good citizens as well, so that they can participate in athletics. If a student is enrolled in any of our programs, whether it's the virtual program, a hybrid program, an independent study program, those programs are all eligible for Calistoga Athletics, including Palisades as well. And then the last bullet point here is that conditioning workouts are allowed with restrictions if the county is off of the watch list. This summer, we debated on whether we would allow summer workouts and conditioning workouts, and then we chose not to because of some equity issues and making it fair to all the student athletes. And then shortly after we made that decision, the county was put on the watch list, and we weren't able to do that conditioning anyway. So at this time, students can do a conditioning program at home that their coaches recommended. They could do workouts in their backyard or something, but we're not getting students together to work with their coaches or to work with one another even, and especially with any equipment, until we have a county health list redone from what it is currently. And I think that's all that was on the slide there. If there are any questions or comments, I know that was a lot of information in a hurry there, but I wanted to share where we are and how things have moved forward in athletics.
I do. I'm very happy to know that I'll be watching some football this year. I'm sorry, did I cut somebody off? And so my biggest question is in regards to the transfers. When will our students know if a team is being fielded, or say if they find out mid-semester, are they going to transfer mid-semester? How does that work?
Well, it's all new, Mark. I completely understand your question, and I have the same question. Louise and I were talking about some of that a week or two ago. This is a new policy that they've never allowed before. And so we don't know what the time restriction will be on when we can say yes or no, we're having a sport, whether we need to say that, a month before it starts or the day it officially starts, we don't know yet. And the North Coast section has never allowed transfers before. So this is new to us, and so we'll get more information in the fall as they continue to meet, and hopefully we don't have to worry about any of that. Hopefully we have enough kids for all of our sports and we offer our full program. But if something does change, we will stay right on top of those new North Coast section guidelines.
Yeah, it would almost make more sense just to allow them to play and continue to go to school. I don't know what the regulation is on that, if that's even feasible. But your report was awesome, Eric. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very informative.
So much up in the air right now. It's hard to say, what direction anything will go. But they did a lot of thought thinking that all the way out. So that's good. Anybody else?
We hope everything's as normal as it can be, and it's a good enrichment program for our kids, and it's a big part of the community, and we'll just have to wait and see. Like everything else, we can't read the future. So thank you for your time tonight, and I will let you move on with your agenda.
Thank you, Eric, for all of that. I appreciate it. Okay, moving on to our next section, our information discussion. So we're going to start out with Western Association of Schools and Colleges WASC letter, and I will turn it over to Raul to go ahead and let us know all about that.
All right, thank you. Happy New Year. As you recall, last spring we had our WASC visit, and we were very fortunate that we were able to squeeze that in because we had the WASC visit on March 8th to the 10th, and then of course we went to distance learning after that 1 week. And we did get the results of that WASC visit in mid-July, and basically, as you recall, we were on probation for the last 2 years. Calistoga Junior and Senior High School was placed on probationary status, and the decision was made to remove us from probationary status and grant us restoring the full accreditation. So that's great news, and of course it was all the great work that the staff had been doing for the last 2 years, and and working on those critical areas that the last WASP visit had found. Also with the leadership of Jessica Musser, but also just because the WASP visiting committee, of course, sees all aspects. They see the report, of course, they see the teaching, they see interview students, but they also bring parents in, and just knowing that their parents and our students and everybody was really highlighting a lot of those special programs and the great things, the great work that Cal Stewart Senior High School has been doing. It was really a highlight of the report. We, of course, still have areas that we need to work on. They are coming back this year, so because we were already on a 3-year cycle, but at least we're off that probationary status. So just wanted to share that with the board.
I wanted to, again, I mean, I hate to continue with this, or you're doing a great job, Raul. The timeline that this letter came to the board is outstanding. The letter is dated July 9th, and here we are in August getting it. Awesome work, man. Great hires all the way around.
Thank you.
Thanks, Raul, and a special thanks to the teachers that spearheaded all that hard work. So, thanks.
Julie, I have a small request, if you will, to Raul or the whole district to make sure that we inform the parents about this change of status. I know there was particularly a group of parents who were very up in arms in terms of us being on probation, you know, and our district is putting into you know, getting the best that we can be, and you know, just let them know, make sure that, you know, they get this information soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I did share with the stakeholders that participate in the WASP process. I did send an email out to those parents that had come on campus and met with the visiting committee. But it also is part of my welcome back letter that will be going out to the homes. So.
Yeah, I would also agree that the parents, the lack of transparency when all that happened, the dicing of words, you know, like, you know, we're technically not on, you know, just the transparency that we're having here is awesome. It's a breath of fresh air. Thank you.
Thank you, Raul, for all the work. Okay. Moving on to another report, 8.2 Food Services Administrative Review, and that's to you, Maureen.
I thought I pushed the button and I didn't push it hard enough, I guess. So we conducted our food service review this year. It happens usually every 3 to 4 years. So I think the last time we did it, I want to say was 16, 17 maybe. The review was actually completed on June 2nd, and it's about a 4-month process. All of it was done electronically this year because we were closed due to COVID. Normally CDE is here for 3 or 4 days during the review, watching our lunch and breakfast services and looking at our kitchens. Of course, that didn't happen this year, so we just completed all of the documentation electronically. There are hundreds of areas and topics that are reviewed by CDE for our food service program, and out of those hundreds of areas, we had 5 findings that were actually pretty minor. The first finding was we hadn't completed a non-program food services tool to show what expenditures were non-program foods and making sure we had enough of a contribution into our program for all those non-service foods. So that was one finding, our first finding. And we have to submit a corrective action for each of our findings. So obviously our corrective action here is going to be to make sure we complete that tool on a yearly basis. The second finding was that our local meal charge policy was being given out at the very beginning of the year to all of our students, but students that came in during the middle of the year weren't receiving a copy of that policy. It is listed on our website, but CDE wants to make sure that even when new students do come in, they're actually receiving a paper copy of that charge policy. And so our corrective action is we're going to do just that, make sure every student that comes in after registration is done initially also receives a charge policy statement. And then the third finding was in regards to our charge policy and our wellness policy, we only had parts of the non-discrimination statement included in those policies. And that non-discrimination statement, it changes very often. And so we have to just make sure that when we are publishing anything that is related to food services, that we are putting in that non-discrimination statement and we're including the entire statement. So Rose is going to make sure on a yearly basis, she's checking to make sure that statement hasn't changed, or if it has been updated, update all of our forms that we do send out. The next finding was they didn't have 2 health inspections reported from the Boys and Girls Club because we do business with the Boys and Girls Club. We provide snacks on a daily basis. Their kitchen also has to be inspected by the health department. And it just happened that we did not get their second health inspection paperwork. So in the future, Rosa, as a corrective action, is going to make sure that we have both years or both inspection dates paperwork in our files. And then the last one was an after-school snack finding, and it was that at one point when the reviewer looked at our meals and the meal requirements that were served, the actual component of fruit was short, and it was because the oranges that was fruit for that day was not big enough to complete the requirement of that component. So we had to submit a corrective action for that to CDE, and our corrective action is going to be that we buy oranges big enough that fulfill that requirement. So all in all, it was a very successful review for our food service department. I commend Rosa and her staff for just what great work they do on a consistent basis. They work very hard. They have worked hard all summer with COVID and actually providing extra meals as well. So great kudos to that food service staff. We are all set now for our CDE review for probably another 3 to 4 years. So hopefully in those 3 to 4 years, we will excel even more and won't have any findings. Does anybody have any questions?
I just want to commend Rosa because she came in and really pulled that department together and then got hit with, was it 3 different audits the first year that she was taking command. So we did awesome. Thank you.
We did awesome. Yeah.
And she's done an amazing job during this whole COVID, and now moving forward, producing all the to-go food. I mean, I just am so impressed.
Yes. Lots of hard work coming out of that department for sure. And we have a great staff, always willing to just pitch in and do what needs to be done to get the job done, make sure our students get fed. So it's awesome.
Especially because a lot of the stuff I'm reading out of bigger districts that the whole program's been shut down. So we're really lucky that we've kept it going. So anybody questions on that? Okay, so just circling around to that report that Maureen just gave us brings us to 8.3. So last meeting, we talked a lot about what kind of, there's several audits and reports and checks and balances that happen throughout the year. And I think in the past there were things that were brought to the board and other things that were just deemed routine that are not brought to the board. So Trustee Galindo thought it would be good to talk a little bit about that and decide what we need brought to the board. Do we want every single thing brought to the board? Do we want to leave it up to the superintendent and the current president to decide what we think is, the types of things that need to be passed by? So give the floor to Mark for a quick minute to tell us if there's anything you have to say. And then, of course, the other board members can chime in on how we want to move forward with this. Obviously, time is of the essence. And if these are things that operationally are taking care of themselves,
So
I don't necessarily need to know that the oranges aren't big enough, but I'll leave it to you.
no, absolutely, I agree. But also, if some corrections are needed to be made in the non-discrimination policy, like why ain't we updating that? That we should
Mark,
be
I'm going to
against.
stop you just 1 second, okay? Because we've explained this a few times, and I just want to make sure it's very clear. It was
Okay.
not the policy itself, it was whether it was printed on every sheet of paper. We were dinged because 7 pieces of paper, only 5 things had our policy. It's not whether or not we had a policy.
Oh,
It's
okay.
whether or not we printed it on paper.
I
I want
understand.
to make
So
sure everybody's clear, because people will grab a hold of things out of context.
but to be honest, Julie, we don't know because we've never seen the report. We're just taking Maureen's word. So let me focus on transparency, accountability, student services, and student achievement. One report that was, and if I may, so let me give you an example on how it applies to student achievement and student services. On April 2019, we had a report on special education. We asked for that. I asked for that report for almost 6 months, and then we finally get it, and then we finally get all these hires. So if we can expedite that process, the transparency issues is, Raul's doing a great job. The first SARC report letter was issued May 3rd. We didn't get that report until some trustee put it on the superintendent, the trustee of self-evaluation, and quoted the report. And then we get the report on our SARC report, our Accreditation Commission of Schools of Western Association and College, schools and colleges. And so that shows a deficiency that was happening here, where our accreditations at stake. If we were made aware of this, we could have made the changes immediately. As far as special education goes, if the need is there, then there's certain indicators to expedite the process once we are made aware of, because this isn't a recommendation. These are mandates. If these students have IEPs, that's a mandate. We need to get these services to these kids, and the faster we expedite that process, the better. Back to another report. We had a presentation on the school and student performance data, but yet we haven't yet had a presentation on the school's accountability report card, which seems to be the only report that goes in the consent agenda consistently. And so it is in this report where the disparities along racial lines and student groups are identified. And so why isn't this made aware to us? Why isn't this presented? The school report card is. The CAS report is. We get presentations on all this. Why don't we get a presentation on this? So back to transparency, accountability, student services, and student achievement. Some of these aren't recommendations, they're mandates. And the sooner that we are made aware of it, a transparency policy, a report policy, as a governing body of this, we are the checks and balances in this system. How can we demand accountability if we are never informed of it? And that's my point. There should be a steady timeline. Like, Raul, great job again. The 9th of last month, and we are informed of this. That's awesome. And so these other reports that identify deficiencies, disparities, student achievement, that are more 2 levels, and that is the indicator in where it is a mandate to give these students some support. So if we are not aware of it, how are we doing our job as a trustee? We are the checks and balances in this system. And so what I would hope for, because Raul might not be here one day, and it is our policies, our board policies, our administration policies, that is where we function. That is our job. And so if we're not, if we don't have a transparency policy, how are we to give the information out when this information is aware to everybody else except the board? I think that we should have a policy in that regard.
Erin, do you want to, is there anything you want to say in terms of timeliness of things presented and how that fits into our schedule?
Well, I did ask our attorney from Lozano Smith and also Paula Consulta CSBA. There is no existing policy regarding the timelines for reporting to the board. You could always create one if you felt you needed to do that.
We certainly can give some standards. My position as a board trustee is that I feel like we are more transparent than we have ever been. I personally, and every board member can chime in, feel like things are brought to us in a timely manner, in that the reports are for the operational staff, for you to look at what's changing and for you to start implementing things. I, as a governing board, like to see that, but I personally don't feel that our district is intransparent right now. So obviously Mark feels that way. So I'd love for the other board members to chime in about how they feel about it. We can certainly put together some standard of, you know, a report is received, we give the operational staff a sufficient amount of time to process the report and have it in presentable form. We're not perfect. People are not perfect. Processes are perfect. We can figure out a system that will work, but I personally feel that we are very diligent right now. And I mean, I would let the other board members chime in right now and give their opinion as well, because we are a board with 5 opinions.
Julie, would you like me to just share briefly on the 2 documents Mark has shared, just to give some context to those?
Yes, please.
So I think it's important to share what those documents are and give some background. The special ed report has been referenced on multiple occasions. That was a self-study that the district contracted for because we wanted to learn more about our program. We wanted expert eyes on our program. We asked for recommendations on our program. We did make a determination that as we share it as a document, it's helpful to share that with the lists of action steps. So as opposed to showing a document that says we recommend these 1 through 10 things, we wanted to share it with these are the 10 things that are recommended, and then here are the action steps that we're taking. So that's the choice that we made. It wasn't in any way an effort to not be transparent. I think we talked about that report all along. It was just the desire to be able to share it with some good thinking about what we were going to do about it. You know, if it's the board's will that we share reports up front and then come back with actions, that makes sense too. But I think just to make sure that the intent of our action is stated, it was in no way an attempt to be anything less than transparent. It was just to be effective in communicating what our actions were going to be. The SARC presentation, we actually did give a presentation on SARC in the spring and the function of SARC. I would personally not recommend that come to the board annually as a report. All the information in the SARC comes out in different reports, which are more meaningful during the year that we do openly report on. SARC is, in a lot of ways, an antiquated document that just captures the data in a different way, but it really is a very dry document that I've never seen in a district reported openly. Like I said, the data in that report comes out of the dashboard, it comes out of the CAST results, it comes out in all those other reports that we report on, you know, openly and with great depth. So just to, you know, share what those documents are and why we've had the rationale behind how we've presented these things.
I think it comes down to an issue of trust, and you know, just hand in hand with transparency. The thing is, you know, in the past we haven't had such a trusting and transparent relationship with the district office, and that's been a shame. But I think that we've got a different team and a different culture, and and I think sure we can remain vigilant on this and keep tabs on what reports we're seeing and not seeing, but I don't think we need to see every single thing. I think we can trust our district office, the whole team to decide what we need to be shown. And of course, if any of us ever wants to see a report, we should be able to ask for it and either see it in private or have it presented to the board at a meeting. But I think there's a lot of information that goes through the district office, and we don't need to see it all.
I
don't know if you guys heard
I-
any of that.
Matt, I agree with you. There's a lot of information that goes through, and I'm not an educational professional. My job is
the internet again.
is to guide the overall policy. We've hired excellent people that know a lot more about this stuff than I do, and so for me to get into the nuts and bolts of some of that stuff, that doesn't do me any good. I need the overview, the important stuff. But if somebody wants, I agree with you, Matt, if somebody needs something and they have a question, there's no reason why that report shouldn't get to whatever trustee or teacher, staff, parent, whatever. So.
Okay, I'll just reiterate, this is the only, as far as Michael just explained, this is the only one that breaks it down in percentages with numbers and not colors, along racial lines, around these different student groups. If it wasn't for this report, we wouldn't know about that. And as far as the special ed report, a lot of the hires are from the information you got from this, but yet we knew we had students with these IEPs, but we didn't do anything until we got the report. And then from what I hear, the support that we're giving them isn't enough because the numbers have doubled. Are we reviewing these numbers? Are we hiring in lockstep with the need, or are we waiting for a report to come out that we got a request for to review? I mean, it's transparency, as simple as that. We can trust everybody, but then look at our district on how these students are doing, and we wonder why we're enduring white flight and affordable flight. People that can afford to move their kids, they're moving their kids because we're not in lockstep with the need of the student services, nor the support, nor let alone academic achievement in these groups. We can explain it with their poverty levels and all that, but that's a piss poor excuse if you ask me, man. Transparency, accountability.
Okay, so now we're getting, go ahead.
I would say that there is a big difference between being transparent and trying to micromanage. I really don't think that this body is created for that. We have a superintendent, we have administrators, we have people who are in charge of the educational part that, I have some education background, but I'm not pretending to give lectures about knowing more than the administrators and people who have the credentials for it. Having said that, I think that it's important that if there are certain reports that one of the board members is really interested in monitoring that, then yes, go for it. But from these requests, I'm seeing that we want to look at every single thing. And to be completely honest, we don't have the time to focus on reviewing every single document that goes to the office, to the district office, because we have jobs, full-time jobs. We have other things that we need to take care of. So I feel like we should leave the professionals to do their job, trust that they're going to be doing what they're getting paid to do, and get what is important. I have never not received something that I haven't asked for. If I reach to Erin or to her staff with a request for information, I always get it. If if it's of interest of me. And obviously with the type of job that I have, working with the Family Resource Center, we constantly ask for information and we get it. So we need to prioritize. What is it that we need to see? And, and if a specific board member wants to see more than, be my guest. But again, we need to trust the people that we have leading the district in terms of education, in terms of monitoring the budget and things like that. And obviously, we have to keep an open eye on those things. I'm not saying ignore it. I'm saying prioritizing what is it that we want to see.
I would agree with you for the most part. I didn't run because I felt the leadership at the district was doing a great job. Neither did Matt. We're tired of seeing all these kids leave. And so if we are not the one who are demanding transparency and accountability, if the governing board can't get it, you say if we request something, I requested a presentation on the SARC report. And what I got was an explanation on why the SARC report is necessary, but not a report on the report, not a presentation on the report. So you say if we ask something, we should get it. Well, I haven't.
Mark, I think
Transparency. We're in the middle of an election again. And so I encourage newcomers because this, you're going to give her a blank check? Come on now.
nobody's giving her a blank check, Mark. And I think that
Mark, you're getting off topic here. Yes, it's an election year and you're starting to go down that road. This is not what this is about.
No, I agree. What is it? Well, it's not about the election. You're correct. What it's about is transparency and accountability. What I'm saying is the services that our students are getting are not in lockstep with the needs. And that's where we need to be. We need to quicken the process with this information coming out. So as that previous WASP report says, our data collection is in the infancy stage, right? And so if I'm not trying to get in. I just want to be made aware of, and our parents need to be made aware of the deficiencies in the district. And if I hadn't asked for this report, would we have got it? I don't know. I know it took me 6 months to get a report that was dated in April 2019.
You've made your point.
okay, so I think moving forward, what we should do is we should just put a standard in place in how soon we want to present. Special ed was a self-study. We got the resorts back. Those were being used by the district office to gear their efforts. We can just put together a standard time of which we get a report in, whether or not we want Michael to put together, or whomever is answering to the report, put together action steps before or after it's presented to the board. We'll put together a standard, and hopefully that will alleviate Trustee Galindo's thoughts that these are being delayed because of transparency issues, when that might not really be the case.
And again, Julie, my request to prioritize. What is it that we really want to know,
right,
rather than trying to micromanage everything, because that's not what we are here for.
Right. And these reports present data, and I do understand, Mark, the expediency in that we want to make changes, but operationally, those changes sometimes can't happen as fast as we would like them to. However, what I've seen in the district since Erin has taken over, in that she has moved the needle on many, many things, that self-study that we ordered as a district for special ed was to help us, and it's helped us improve things. Whether or not you saw it as soon as they sought to use it in their operational improvements, we're making the improvements we need to make. And so I think that we can't get off the topic of, let's just go with what is the standard for reports being presented to the board. we'll make a standard, and we'll move forward. Because I personally, as the board president, I don't like all this throwing around of things saying that we're not being transparent, and because that's not how I feel it's going right now. If a report was delayed, it was not delayed because we were not being transparent or they were not being transparent with us. It was delayed because there's a whole myriad of action steps that need to take place to present the data, to, we're not perfect. Yes, maybe a WASC report wasn't given to us soon enough, but they had already taken action steps on it. So I just want to be very careful as not to negate the extreme hard work that everybody in this district has been doing for the last year in throwing around words of calling people non-transparent, because I personally, as a board president, don't think that's the case.
So Julie, I will come back with a suggested timeline for the reports, and perhaps you and I can work on that before the next meeting.
That sounds perfect. And if we need to circle in one more board member to look at the schedule of things. I mean, oftentimes we're not going to know reports are coming in, but we can do our best to set a standard so that Mark feels comfortable with the overarching transparency of when he can expect following results and stuff. Okay. Does anybody else want to say anything on that point, discussion item? Okay. 8.4 board policies and administrative regulations, first reading. Toss it to Aaron.
Sorry about that. These are policies for our first read. I did not give you a lot this time because we have a number of them on the board agenda for action tonight. So as every month, these reflect changes in law, and you will be able to discuss them at this meeting and then hopefully approve at the next meeting.
Okay, so obviously you've read over the 3 board policies. Does anybody have any questions or need any clarification on them? Okay, all right. All right, then we'll move on to reports. 9.1, we'll start out with Principal Lamar from the elementary school.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm hoping my internet holds tight. I've had to kind of come in and out just because some of the audio gets a little bit choppy. So the first thing I wanted to share is that last week we had quite a few of our elementary teachers volunteer to participate in the Napa Learns training. And Napa Learns is just an amazing group in terms of they're very relevant. They're always thinking about what is going to directly impact our educators. And so they put together training for our teachers that really specifically focused in on supporting students in virtual learning. And so the first day was really dedicated to creating, what we call like virtual spaces for both teachers and students to have as they were moving forward in a virtual learning model. Then the next day was focused on social emotional learning with an emphasis on using Zoom and Pear Deck to support. And Pear Deck's basically like surveys just to check in with students and see how they're feeling that day or how the workload is going, but it does address the social emotional learning needs of students, which is something that we do have to keep in mind as we move forward this year. And then the final day was and even though this was all done virtually, a lot of embedded support for teachers to develop videos. With the idea, one of the words that we've been using quite a bit as we're moving forward with virtual learning is the synchronous, which means kind of live, like what we're doing right now. And the asynchronous is a recording that a student would review. And so teachers learned how to basically create videos to support student learning, and also to have a little bit of humor with students as well. And so for the most part, our teachers felt that they had a pretty good toolkit to take out after participating in that training. And I think that another thing, because I also participated in the training, and I was very impressed with the philosophy of a growth mindset that really just permeated throughout all the presenters. So the next thing I'd like to present is, and Chris, I'm glad you're here. I want to give a huge thumbs up to our custodial and maintenance staff. They have done a great job getting CES ready. And just something to consider is that because of COVID-19 and the mindfulness that we have to have with regard to social distancing, which includes our staff as well, we have made some changes at CES. When you walk in, we do have guards around the secretary's area. We've also, for those of you who are aware of our workroom and then also our staff room, they're pretty tight spaces. And so what we did is we moved our staff room to where room 9 is. That's the lab room, and it allowed us to give personal space for our para-educators so that they have somewhere to put their things and they're not all sharing a common space. It's also a little bit larger and they can spread out if they need to reheat food, and it's also closer to our outside area so that when they're eating outside, they can get to their food and personal items easier. So with the old staff room, what we did is we spread out the copiers and the laminators and the printers so that they're not all on top of each other, so that people can spread out more and get work done. And so what we're going to be looking at, because not all of our staff are reporting this week, we are going to be looking at creating a schedule so that each grade level gets access to the workroom and not feel like they're all on top of each other. But again, that could not have been done without the great help of our maintenance and custodial staff. And then finally, I wanted to talk a little, because I haven't seen you guys for a while, so we have a couple, events that have happened in between, is that during the summer, we had CES staff participate in the reopening of schools task force. And as you guys remember, back in June, our charge was really to create an opportunity for in-person learning. And so we did survey our teachers. We looked at the safety standards. I think Erin did present it to you at the last board meeting about how in-person learning was going to look at CES, where we were dividing our students into cohorts and having the A-B days, with Wednesday dedicated to virtual learning for all of our students. Since then, because we got put on the watch list, we had to start in a virtual model. And so what we did as a result of the task force is that we reached out to our families, because we do have some families that at this point, for a variety of reasons, are not comfortable returning to school in an in-person model. And so we heavily surveyed our parents. First of all, I would like to commend, when we first sent out the enrollment forms, we had 135 responses from families indicating that they wanted the Wildcat Academy, which I have to say that if I had done that Google form in previous years, that turn-in would have been much lower. Then I want to thank the Family Center, because we, as we were approaching the deadline, we had, I think, about 130 families that had not responded yet to the enrollment survey. And so they did a great job of calling up all the households. And something that just makes my heart smile in Calistoga is often when they get the call, they immediately walk over to the school and they'll say, hey, I don't have a smartphone, can I just give you my enrollment results? And so we sat on computers and got those all inputted. At the beginning of last week we were looking at we were down to 31 families who had not responded, which again, in comparison to previous years, was much lower, and we got it down to 10 families that did not respond. So we also, at the same time, with the Wildcat Academy, with initially 138 people indicating that they wanted it, there were some duplicates, meaning some people did the enrollment form twice. So we deleted that down to 127, and then we did individual phone calls to each of those families, just really explaining what the academy was and making the request that they did commit for the academic year in that academy. And then in between that, getting our parents who hadn't responded, we ended up with a final count of 108 students. So if you were gonna run a percentage, you'd be looking at like the low 20%. In comparison to other districts, that is slightly lower, but I feel pretty confident in that data because there was so much outreach done to those families. And so what we will be doing this week is that we are going to be having a kindergarten orientation. Now that we have our models out and our draft of our virtual guidelines, I want to circle back to those kindergarten parents because I met with them in the beginning of the summer, and I'd like to do an orientation since we didn't get to do it. And then I will also be having a general meeting with parents to just map out how next week is going to look. So again, it definitely took a lot of participants to get this data together, and I'm really appreciative not only of the Family Center, but also of our secretaries, Bea and Veronica, who really mechanically went through that data with a fine-tooth comb. And that's my report for tonight.
So Nicole, I want to make sure I understood you. You are going to have a push out sort of webinar thing to all the parents to kind of show them what the new system's going to look like.
Yeah, and I'm going to also have an overall letter. We do have to distribute devices next week. And so I'd like to send out the letter and also offer the opportunity for a virtual meeting to clarify any questions.
Okay, lots going on. Thank you for everything. Oh, when's paperwork? Do you also have push out? Because aren't we all online now with paperwork?
It's my understanding that once school starts, we are going to be sending a smaller packet home to families. And we are looking to do more online with Aries for like registration.
Anybody else before we move on to Raul? Okay, then we'll go ahead and move on to 9.2, Raul's presentation for the high school.
Okay. Last time I did a principal's report, it was June 6th, so we're just getting ready to graduate our seniors at that time. So it's been a while. But I'm going to go into LCAP goal number 1, ensuring academic excellence for our students. We're really excited to start off the year of 2020, 2021. Our theme for the year is going to be bridging the distance between us and through our academic pursuit. I would try and get a theme for a year, so something to work on as we go through the year. So that's going to be our theme. Again, bridging the distance between us through academic pursuit. And we're going to start really focusing on the 3 R's. It's not our regular 3 R's that we always focus on. The reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's going to be reconnect. How do we reconnect with our students when we have had this gap already? How do we reculturate what we stand for as a community of learners? And then also the 3rd R would be reform. How are we reforming our expectations of student engagement? So that's going to be the work that we're going to start off with and focus as we work through this learning model. The fall semester, we really have some renewed expectations for our students. It's not going to look anything like it did last spring. And what we did last spring is not something going to be starting off like in the fall. Our bar is going to be set high for students and for our staff. I'm grateful for the work that Michael has been doing in creating this professional development plan that will start on tomorrow. So thank you, Michael, for that. And then going on to OCAP goal number 2, providing a safe, healthy, and positive school environment. Of course, safety has been in our minds the whole summer. And I am thankful to members of the task force that have really worked in developing a plan that we could open up the schools, their collaboration, their spirit of collaboration, and the work that they have really brought to the table, expertise. Eric and Kathy are part of that task force, and they bring a lot of information and expertise to the table, and I think we have a pretty solid plan. We were just even meeting earlier to try and figure out the focuses that we're going to be touching upon with the staff starting on Wednesday. And then I will be sharing with the families this week a return to school guide. There's going to be basically three communication things going on with families: a return to school guide, a COVID-19 school plan, and a plan for material distribution. Those are all important information that we were just waiting on a minor details to send out to families. Part of the return to school plan is to create a wellness team as well. We are very concerned with the social emotional health of our students. So we're creating this team to keep a pulse on our school community and social emotional health. The wellness team will provide resources and support to ensure school-wide holistic approach to supporting student learning and their social emotional well-being. And then finally on OCAP goal number 3, increasing parent engagement and enhancing communication. We're really, I've heard great things of the work that Rosa Rubio did with her videos that she put out this summer. So we're following on that successful approach and reaching out our parents. We'll be creating some videos. We're planning already how to, of course, it'll be in Spanish and English, but we're planning already on, how to use Google Classroom, how to access the ARIES portal for parents, so that we could really, the plan is to have our parents be involved in the education, since they have to play a really stronger role as educational coaches in their homes. So having this instructional videos, I think, online will allow for access at any time, of course, from not only from our parents, but also from our community groups that work with our parents, like the Up Valley Family Center that was mentioned. And again, we're excited for the start of the year, getting ready. That's my report.
So Raul, I just want to be clear, you're pushing out written documentation and we're not doing any kind of like webinar with question and answer type format?
There will be, yes, there will be an opportunity on the written documentation. There's an opportunity for Zoom meeting to join me for questions and answers. But also, like I mentioned, after we get things a little bit going further, we'll be putting out some videos too.
Anybody else have any questions? Is that you raising your hand, Jeff, or no? Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you, Raul. Appreciate it. And now moving on to Michael, who's presenting for Educational Services and HR.
Okay, well, it's been a very busy summer. I feel like this could be, a very lengthy report. We've all been working very hard and there's been a lot happening. What I will share tonight is we are very excited about our new hires. We hired 12 new staff this year. Some of those are new positions. Some of those are temporary positions for teachers on leave. And some of them are for teachers who have left the organization and we're replacing them. But the quality of the people that we are bringing into this district again this year is so strong. We had a new employee orientation today and got to spend even more time with them than we have. But I'm excited just to see them get in there and get working with students. We did talk about, I think one of the challenges that they'll face and something that I, want to support them through is as we're in a virtual environment, how do we build relationships with kids, students that we don't previously have a relationship with? How do we build relationships with our staff members? I think we're an organization that, if nothing else, we are built on relationships and our ability to collaborate with one another. And so, that'll be an interesting challenge with so much Zooming and so much virtual communication. But I can just say how excited I am, and I think our goal will be to do this year after year, continue. The way things fell, we did more summer hiring than last year and probably the year before. So I'm very appreciative of the people on the panels who gave up their time. I think Nicole Lamar in particular, because many of these positions were elementary. We spent a lot of time in Zoom interviews, and I know that's time that she and the rest of the interview panels, would probably be rather spending some summer fun time. So thank you for everyone who participated in the interview process, because to have lots of stakeholders as part of that process is good for everyone. It's good for us. It's good for the candidate. So I'm excited for you to meet them, and mostly excited for them to start their work with students. Also, just share a little bit with you about the upcoming professional development, which starts tomorrow. So we're very excited about that and getting the year started with our staff. We did add 2 days this year to the certificated learning, the PD days that happen before school. We felt we needed more time for professional development. We needed more time for staff level conversations. We needed more time for teacher workday and teachers to prep and plan. So the PD will start tomorrow with some virtual learning professional development. I looked at a lot of organizations. This is just such an important element of skill building for our staff. And I looked at lots of groups, and who is it going to be that will do good work? And we ended up with a group called Ed Tech Team. They're based out of Minnesota, and they are just exemplary. And they're going to do great work with our staff starting tomorrow. And they'll do a variety of topics from virtual lesson plan development and delivery, some differentiated work around Google Classroom, which is our central program. So splitting the group up into our beginner group, our intermediate group, and they'll do some work on how to do assessment and feedback for students in a virtual environment. These are topics that come out of staff surveys and knowing what staff needs are and what they're asking for in the way of learning. So it's going to be a great day tomorrow, and then we will be partnering with this group for once a month PD through December. And so we'll survey our staff after this week of PD and see what needs we want to address over the next several months. Also tomorrow will be some professional development on Seesaw, which is our new platform for TK through second grade. And that company will do the initial training for our staff. We also have a meeting tomorrow with our special education team. We'll be joined by Ginny Maywald, SELPA director, and Kim Craven, our program specialist, school psychologist, and we'll talk about the current state of affairs in special education. This is very complicated stuff with regard to timelines and IEP requirements in the midst of an in-person school closure. So we'll have some good conversation about that tomorrow. And then throughout the week, we'll also do some learning about MAP, which is our new assessment system being used throughout the county. Came to us through our data leadership team and a pilot last year. There is some real enthusiasm, I think, with MAP from our staff. We've had reading inventory and math inventory in place and ritualized. We do these assessments, but I think there have been some concerns around the quality of that data. I think we all know we want better data, and we want a better system, a more up-to-date and current system that's easier to navigate. So I think there's some real staff excitement around MAP, and so those trainers from the company will come and spend almost a full day with us. We'll do some work around Data Zone, which is our data warehouse. This is where we store all our student data, performance data, academics, behavior, and attendance. They've released a new tool called the Early Warning Indicator. And this is a way to get reports and screening information when students start to struggle, so that when we look at putting in interventions, we can do that early, not after the child has failed, but when the student starts to struggle. We will also do some work on trauma-informed practices. This is very important work. I think all of us are concerned, not just about the academics right now, but the social emotional well-being of our kids. And this is that work. I would say though that it's, you know, it's not brand new work. We've been doing, and our students, this is another part to that work. It's not brand new work. Trauma-informed practices comes from outside of the world of education. It's had an impact on lots and lots of industries, but it's important to us too. And I won't go too deep on it, but it's the idea that all students and frankly all adults have experienced some level of trauma in their lives. And heck, I think COVID-19 qualifies, right? I mean, this has been a very difficult circumstance for everyone. And when someone has experienced trauma, it may result in them reacting in ways that are unpredictable, struggling with learning, having negative behaviors. And we need to understand that when we interact with students and each other, to be sensitive about how we do that work, how we do our human work, and make sure that we are prepared to be reflective in how we respond. Not necessarily punitive all the time, but reflective of why is that behavior happening and how can we support this child. So it's, you know, I think it's linked in a lot of ways to the restorative practices work. I'm excited that the presenter for this will be basically Aldea, which, you know, it is nice that it dovetails with the current work we do in organizations. It shouldn't feel for our staff like it's another organization, another group of people, another concept. This is an extension of the work that we do. So those are the main topics that we'll train on. And then there'll be a lot of time, like I said, for staff meetings, the time that principals need with their staff, and the time teachers need to prepare. We also continue to be committed to the work on culturally responsive instruction, and that is slated for the October 5th PD Day. That's still important work. It doesn't go away. It's no less important this year than it was last year. It just got sidetracked by the school closure last year. So that work will continue to happen. And then there's lots of other work that will happen throughout the year, but this is how we start the year. So yeah, I'm really excited. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, we'll bring the staff back and we'll kick it off. But the staff deserve good professional development, and I think we've got some things here that will support them and support their work with kids.
Sorry, I want to say something, but the dog is going crazy. I like your excitement, Michael. It's good that you're keeping the energy level up. I had a quick question, and this might be the parent in me, but is there going to be a little bit of, I mean, I think with kids at home, accountability is going to be more important than ever, and a one-stop shop of parents being able to kind of see where their kids are at. And I was really driving everyone crazy last year, checking in with all the teachers, like, what's going on? What's going on? Is he doing? Because a lot of times I'm at work for 8 hours. I can't be watching, you know. Are we going to have a pretty strong use of ARIES where the teachers are able to really kind of push out a comprehensive view every day of what's going on?
We will, yeah, and I think you know, I think Raul's comments speak to it, that, you know, this will be different than the spring. I think in the spring everyone was in crisis mode, and hand it to our teachers for how hard they worked. But that said, things that we routinely did, things changed. I think the state's directive not to provide grades, maybe as much as I understand the rationale, wasn't the best thing for everyone, right? And so we didn't use ARIES in the same way. This year we will go back to systems that probably feel more familiar. ARIES will be used to track attendance as well as participation. We will continue to encourage parents to enroll and support parents in enrolling in the parent portal so they can see that. Schools will have a structured schedule of when students will have online classes. All students will have daily online classes that will be scheduled. So I think, you know, things will be much more structured. And for us, and probably, you know, other schools around the state, you know, we've all had time to reflect, to plan. We've gotten more and better guidance from the state. And so I think you're going to see a much more structured, rigorous program for kids that's going to require more from us as adults. It's going to require more from students. And then the thing I think we really need to pay attention to that is really needs consideration is it's going to require a lot from parents. And maybe that's the parent in me, right? Speaking of, you know, how we do our jobs and support our kids from home. I've always felt that, you know, as an educator, we got to see the best of the kids, right? They push so hard on parents. They show teachers, you know, the best of themselves sometimes. And now we have our students, you know, learning a lot from their parents. So how do we support our parents who are in this role of teacher? I think it's going to be a challenge for them. And for all different,
It's going to be challenging for sure. There's a few of us here in the neighborhood that have been spending the last couple days just setting up a workstation in our house that feels more like a specific spot for them to go. You know what I mean? So
yes, I do.
get them in the mode of like, no, this isn't you jumping on your computer in your room. This is where you're going to be, right where I can put the camera on you. No, I'm just kidding.
I think that's a great idea, having another physical space where this now feels like school or routines. We're in school now.
I wonder if they give an educational discount on that little Ring device that you can buy at Costco. You know, you put it right over their desk and it goes to your phone. And
I don't know.
I just thought of that idea right now. Yeah. Okay. Anybody questions for Michael? No? Okay. All right. Then we will move on to, it's Maureen, right? 45-day budget adoption update.
Yes, with all those wonderful things that we're doing for our staff and our students, it takes a lot of money. So we've been given some great funding from CDE in the regards of learning loss mitigation funds. And that's mostly what I'm going to talk about on our 45-day update. The governor signed the budget on June 29th. And if there are significant changes within that state adopted budget, it is my duty to come to the board and report those changes within 45 days of that adoption. So I have until August 13th to let the board know of how this new funding affects our district budget. Is there any way you can make that bigger, Paula? No? Yeesh.
I mean, I can go even closer and you can just like talk line by line.
Yes, that would be great. If you could just do income first, maybe. Okay, so we can go with that.
I can't see, here, let me hide the thumbnails. Okay. You just tell me what you need on the screen.
That's good right there. Perfect.
Okay.
So we did have scheduled in our budget when we went through adoption that we were going to lose about 10% of our revenue limit money because that was what the governor had proposed in May. And for us, that was about $50,000. That has now been put back into our budget. So we're getting our full allotment of LCFF funding. That is the state aid part of our funding, not the property tax part of our funding. And then on our other state income, Prop 98 funds, which is restricted, this is all part of our learning loss mitigation funding. We're going to receive about $79,000 to partake in anything that we need to do for academic support for our students. And that includes all the things we'll talk about on the expenditure side, like professional development for our teachers, staffing needs for dealing with COVID expenses, PPE equipment purchases, all of that. And then on the federal income side, also with learning loss mitigation funding, we received about $887,000. And part of that was broken up between COVID relief funds and governor's emergency education relief funds. And the reason I separate these funds out is because there are spending limits to how fast we have to spend these funds. And that $887,000 figure, we actually have to spend by December 30th. That is all that we have received as far as a spending timeline for the biggest chunk of the money that we received. The rest of the dollars we have until 2022. So what I'm trying to do right now is prioritize all of the things that we know we need to spend before December and get those into that resource for the $887,000 so we can get all that money spent before December. So total income increase since budget adoption is a little over $1 million. And again, the majority of that is for the learning loss mitigation funding. These funds were allocated out by the governor in different categories. One of the categories was your special ed count. The other category was your supplemental and concentration grant counts. and then also your LCFF funding. So we have a high supplemental and concentration grant percentage, and we also have a high special ed count for our district. So we were able to receive funding based on those counts. On the expenditure side, Paul, if you can just roll down a little bit to the expenditures. Most of the expenditures we've put into the budget at this point are to do with the loss learning mitigation funding. The only one that is not is the 10% reduction to school site allocations. I'm going to put that back into the budget. We had reduced what we gave to the sites by 10% because we were losing 10% of our revenue limit or our LCFF funding, but we're putting that back in, so they'll get 10% more funding to do with what they need to at the site. And then the rest is all learning loss mitigation funding due to COVID, due to distance learning, due to blended learning. And the main focus of this money is to make sure that we can cover what losses we're having because the kids aren't in school 100% of the time. So Michael talked about the 2 extra PD days. That's something that will be coming out of this funding. We're bringing back classified staff for an extra day. That will come out of this funding. And then there's a lot of other professional development available to our certificated staff. Nicole had talked about the Napa Learns. We actually had 22 teachers district-wide that participated in the Napa Learns distance learning program. It was fantastic. I think that was a great, great way to spend these dollars because it's all about distance learning. And then we're going to do some fencing over at the elementary school to kind of keep everybody going through going into the entrance the same way. That's about an $80,000 cost that we have budgeted. We have tons of technology that we've purchased, from laptops to Chromebooks to iPads to lots of software to help with distance learning. So that's part of the technology budget. We've done all the cleaning supplies, the PPE equipment. We've added wash stations to all of the campuses, or are in the process of doing that. We're switching our faucets to auto faucets so kids don't have to touch faucets. All of that is part of this funding as well. And then we have about $60,000 in last year's funding. We can go back to March of last year to expend these dollars. So we have about $60,000 from the prior year budget that I'll be able to put towards this funding as well, all in the same categories that I just talked about. We have about $5,000 in nursing services due to just COVID-related expenses. We don't know what those services are going to be at this point, but that's just a safekeeping place for knowing that we may need nursing services related to COVID. And then we have a lot of staff expenses that are related to either distance learning, COVID, blended learning. If we are replacing staff to deal with any of those types of things, we can use this money. If we are moving staff and they're not going to be in their normal positions and they're going to do something related to distance learning or COVID, we can use this money for that. So we have a big chunk of money going to that. And then we have healthy meals. We are able to spend some of these dollars on making sure that, even though it's normal school time and it's normal meal service, making sure that not only we get to keep that staff that we have in food service, and we can't lay them off, so we can use some of these funds to keep that staff, and then on top of that to deliver meals on a daily basis. And then of course there's always going to be special needs, special education needs and support for special education. So there's about $20,000 allocated there. Of course, all of these numbers are fluid. They can move around depending on what our need is. The biggest point I want to make here is we have about $880,000 that we need to spend before December. The rest we can kind of spend as we go, which is good because we don't know what's going to happen come January. But for the most part, everything that we have received in the learning loss mitigation funding, I believe we will have no problem spending by December 30th. Are there any questions from the board regarding the 45-day update?
I do have a question in regards to meals. I heard that other districts are, once the school or distance learning starts, they are only serving meals to students enrolled in the district. And it's different than the summer when everybody under 18 is able to get some food. So my question is, how is that? you know, how is that going to happen starting school, considering that there's going to be students who are enrolled in other districts, but they are on distance learning. So can you talk to me a little bit about that?
So you're right, Indira, we are under now USDA guidelines from the first day of school on, which means we have to treat our meal service just like any other school day if the kids were in school. So yes, we can only serve to our students. I'm going to talk a little bit about CEP and how that correlates in a minute. But as far as not being able to serve our students, are you talking about students that are coming out from another district, or that they're going to be in like childcare that might not be part of our district and related? Okay, so I'm actually, Rose and I met this morning, or this afternoon, and we talked about the fact that if these funds would be able to support that need. So part of the guidance and part of the guidelines was the governor saying that, I'll give our staff childcare as an example. If we have staff that have students in other districts that we need to provide childcare for so the teachers can be at school, can those students receive meals from us and be covered? So I don't have an answer yet, but we are looking into it and have talked about how that relates to students from other districts being able to use these funds to pay for that, if that makes sense.
Okay. Thank you.
But I would
So,
imagine no matter what, we would be committed to that, wouldn't we? Making sure that we were able to provide that.
I hope so. I mean, I'm thinking that because of the guidelines of the spending, we should be able to support that. It's more on the USDA side and whether or not they're going to allow for us to cover non-district students. So more to come from that area. CEP, I talked last board meeting about us applying for community eligibility provision. And at that point we had just applied, we were waiting to hear back. We have been approved. So the elementary school and Palisades will be able to receive free meals no matter what status the student is, whether they're free, reduced, or a paid student. This is fantastic news for our district. It means a lot less following and tracking of eligibility of students, but it also means that more of our students can eat for free and not have to worry about payment or not being able to get a meal because they can't afford it. So we are going to continue at the junior senior high we have to continue with paid meals there. We're going to still try to qualify for CEP at the junior senior high next year if we can. It's going to be different this year with, how many meals we're probably giving out depending on how we learn this year, whether it's, distance learning and we're handing out meals there, or if we're handing out meals when the kids come back to school. But we need the participation rate at the junior senior high school to get higher. So we're going to try with reduced students, we're going to try to actually have them not have to pay the reduced rate and see if that might jump up the participation a little bit at the junior senior high school. Our contribution that we make to that program well exceeds what that cost is for us, so we should be able to handle that with our contribution that we're making to that program from the general fund. So hopefully pretty soon we can have our whole entire district eat for free. But we're off to a good start. I'm so happy about the elementary school.
Maureen, what is that percentage? Because a SARC report shows that we were at 79.2%. What percentages do we need to get that free and reduce that free lunch for at the junior and senior high school?
It's actually, Mark, the percentage of participation, not necessarily the percentage of students that qualify. So that 79% is the percentage of students that qualify. But we have to actually, out of all of those students that qualify, the ones that are directly certified, meaning that they receive some sort of aid to get free meals, the percentage of those students have to actually participate in the program, and that percentage is about 40%. And we're only at about 35 at the junior senior high school right now. So we have a little bit of way to go in order to get, and we actually, majority of our students are direct certified and they don't qualify by application, they qualify because they are receiving some sort of service. So hopefully we can make that work. The other thing I wanted to mention was meal distributions during distance learning. I had also talked before about possibly taking meals out to different areas and delivering meals only once a week for a weekly delivery. Rosa is still working on these plans to finalize them, but what she is planning on doing right now is getting students to getting families to actually say, yes, we want meals. So she'll know some sort of meal count of what she needs to do. And then based on those families that apply or say that they want meals, we will actually go to their area of residence with our van and hand out meals so they don't have to come to the site. We will also have sites available. We'll have people at the site available too for anybody that wants to walk up or come and get a meal as well. But we are planning on only doing that once a week for our families. And it may be that we have 3 different delivery days. We may have to deliver on Monday and then deliver some on Tuesday and then deliver some on Wednesday, depending on how many sign up and where all the places are that we're going to be going. So more to follow on that as soon as we get final plans arranged. We met this last week about tech device deployment, and we met with the principals, Marty, myself, and Melinda. Earlier in the summer, Melinda did a fantastic job of putting together a master list of devices, and so we now know where all of our devices are, whether they're at home, whether they're at school. We now know how we're going to deploy all of those devices. So something a little different is going on at the elementary school than what's going on at the junior senior high school. But we've brought in some help to get devices ready for the elementary school, that they'll just get packaged up and those devices will go to the teacher and the teacher will hand out the devices for the students along with the students' materials when they meet with the teacher for the beginning of school. And then at the junior senior high school, the devices will go out of the library and there'll be somebody there to monitor that and make sure that parents are signing those tech forms saying that they understand that they're taking this equipment and that they are responsible for that equipment when they do take it. So on top of that, we're still putting the final touches together on the devices that we're trying to get to the hard to reach areas. So we have a private network that we've set up with Verizon, and we've got about 20 devices coming for, we hope, areas where T-Mobile can't reach families. The private network was a pain to set up, and we did it through NBN and Verizon. They're just putting the finishing touches on it right now, so hopefully we'll have our devices by next week. The private network had to get set up before we could order the devices. So I know at the elementary school, Nicole was putting together a little list of what families might need that type of mobile hotspot versus a regular T-Mobile hotspot. So we'll work on that as well. And that is all I have for you tonight in my report.
Anybody have any questions for Maureen? That's all good news, like amazing. And thanks for all the work on the meals. I know that it's going to be a lot on the ladies and it's going to be a totally new system of doing things. Yeah, so.
It'll be a new system, but I think it'll save families from having to come down every day. And I think that's, that's going to really, I hope, bring up numbers that people will take more meals.
The fact that you're delivering them is amazing too. So yeah. Go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
I've seen other districts since COVID where they package a week's worth of food. If we're going to make deliveries once, wouldn't that be wise to make sure that these kids have that opportunity to get that meal? Because a lot of our parents work in the service industry and rely on tips, and that ability has been diminished since COVID. How could we do something similar if we're only going out once a week?
I guess I didn't understand what you said. Yeah, we're going to be delivering meals once a week, but it'll be a breakfast and lunch for every single day. Is that what you meant, Mark?
It's all right. It's all right. What I was saying is other districts are packaging a week's worth of meals to get to these students that aren't able to come. And never mind. Never mind.
Okay, well that's what we're trying to do, is reach out to all the students that can't get to us on a daily basis. So Rosa's working on coming up with a plan as far as which particular families would be able to, would be interested in doing that.
Sounds like we're saying the same thing. That's our plan.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. So make sure we're all on the same page. Okay, any other questions? Okay, oh, go for it, Nicole.
Hey, Maureen, if you just want to check in with me, I am working on preliminary schedules for virtual learning with a morning check-in. So there might be the ability for families to communicate first thing. So you know on a day-by-day basis who's going to need the food delivered.
Awesome. Thank you.
Good work, all. Okay, if no other questions, we will move forward to Erin's report.
Thank you, Julie. First, under LCAP goal number 1, ensuring academic excellence for all students. Your senior and their full accreditation. That's a huge accomplishment. So thank you all. And despite the myriad of challenges involved with opening a school year in the middle of a pandemic, I'm excited about re-engaging our students in their learning, feeling the energy of our dedicated staff as they return to the campuses, and I'm truly inspired by the collective efforts of our community. I'm also confident that given the experience that we gained last spring with virtual learning, the new expectations that Michael mentioned from the state that they've provided to our schools, the wide variety of training that our teachers are going to receive in the next few days, and our technology preparation, I think we're going to be very ready for offering a robust virtual learning program that also focuses on the social emotional health of our students. Then under LCAP goal number 2, a safe, healthy, and positive school environment. I am very grateful to the Up Valley Family Center for all the effort that they have put towards hosting the upcoming back to school event this Wednesday. It's going to be from 10 to 5 o'clock. Each family in attendance is going to be receiving a back to school resource guide, a small care package for each student, and a pizza meal to go, which Rosa enlisted community volunteers to help prepare. Then for our incoming kinders, the Family Center has also prepared special backpacks filled with school supplies, as well as a recent edition of books from the Soroptimists. And those bags are going to have the Calistoga Wildcats logo printed on them because they are the class of 2033. The backpacks are going to also include PPE for every family and that's been generously donated by Parents Can. And they will have disposable gloves, masks, and hand sanitizer. And those are going to be distributed on a separate day along with the orientation that Nicole had mentioned earlier. I want to thank Chris Oakes and our facilities department staff. You heard them thanked over and over. They've worked very hard to ensure that we have clean and safe campuses as we open school. And then under LCAP goal number 3, increasing parent engagement, I appreciate both of our principals for their focus on communicating with our families through a little different means this year, virtual meetings, and then also creating these instructional videos. I think that they'll be very successful. And we have successfully concluded negotiations with both of our associations. So we are going to need to hold a special meeting this week to approve the MOUs that we've agreed upon. I just want to say Kathy is, in this meeting and Judy's not here, but I appreciate that we continue to have a positive and productive relationship with both CAT and CSCA. And then lastly, I want to thank every single staff member that's on this or in this meeting right now. The amount of time that people have put in this summer is truly phenomenal. They have worked nights, they've worked weekends, they've worked on days that they should have been taking vacation in order to get everything ready for the school year. So it's been truly a community effort, a group effort, and I just appreciate you all very much, as well as all of your department and school staff members who are not on this call right now, but you know who they are. So thank you all.
Sorry, something's going on. It's my fault. Thank you so much. I just feel like everybody has really shown a positive, awesome face to all of this that was very daunting. And I can't even imagine just the sheer planning out to consider every single scenario that could possibly happen has made a lot of work, but thank you for everything. Okay. Moving on. That was 9.5. Okay. Are we then 10.1, Paula? I'm not missing anything, am I? Nope. Yeah, 10.1. Okay. So 10.1 is consent agenda protocol. So actions proposed for the consent agenda are deemed routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless any member of the board, the audience, or staff request specific items to be removed from the agenda for separate action. So at this point, I would just make sure nobody needs anything removed or discussed. Okay. So then I'm just looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay.
Second.
Was that Matt, second? And it's roll call vote. So Clerk Reed,
Give to Jeff.
Trustee Lopez, Jones,
Aye.
Aye.
gotcha, Clerk Reed. Trustee Maxfield,
Aye.
Trustee Galindo.
Aye.
We got to get Matt a Wi-Fi booster. Okay. All right. That brings us to 11.1 action item protocol. So protocol for action items includes staff presentation, questions from the board, public input, deliberation by the board, and voting by the board. So if there is any public input, there's a 3-minute time limit. So we're going to start off with GASB 7475 valuation report, and Maureen will give us that presentation.
Okay, we completed our GASB 7475 OPED actuarial study on July 27th. So that is the report you received in your board packets. This actuarial study is intended to serve the following purposes. It provides information to our district to manage the costs and liabilities associated with retiree benefits. It provides information to enable Calistoga Joint Unified to communicate the financial implications of retiree benefits to internal financial staff, the board, employee groups, and other affected people. I actually use it for a lot of the reporting that I have to do in various areas. And then it also provides information needed to comply with the GASB 74 and 75 related to other post-employment benefits. So it's a law, we have to do the report. The findings of the report were pretty similar to what we've had in the past. And the first finding was for current employees, the value benefits accrued in the beginning of July was about $63,000. The service cost for these employees increase each year based on what we have covered in payroll and whether or not that employee is eligible to take the retiree benefit or not. The second finding was the estimated amount that would have accumulated to be 590, sorry, I'm reading something and I misread. Our total OPEB liability is about $590,267,000. And we have set aside funds. If you, even in our consent agenda tonight, we had our quarter four PARS liability fund. That's what we use this fund for, is to cover our liability for our GASB and OPEB retiree benefits. We have about a balance of 1.1 million in that fund, and our liability is only 590,000. So we actually have a net gain of $552,000 as a negative liability. So we are in very good shape as a district as far as the findings of the study go. Whoever decided long ago to start putting money into that fund, that was a very smart move. We can use this money at any time to pay for any of our obligations for our retiree benefits, so that money is available to us to pull out when the board decides to do so. So far, we have not needed it, and we can cover our costs for retiree benefits out of our general fund. But some of the recommendations that this report provided in total compensation systems suggested was that we isolate the cost of retiree benefits. We do this in the general fund already, so that's something we're already doing. They also recommend that we maintain an inventory of all our benefits and services that we provide to retirees. We are already doing that. And then the other thing we should be doing is when an employee gets hired, we should already be designating that employee as whether or not they're going to be able to be eligible to receive this benefit. And that is something we're not doing, but I'm hoping to, that's one of my goals for the future, is to make sure that we're earmarking each employee. And what we should be really doing is taking that liability of that employee out of that cost for that employee on a monthly basis. So we're not doing that so far. It's something we can work towards. I'm not super worried about it because, like I said, we have a negative obligation at this point, so we're in really good shape. If things do turn around, I would think that'd be much more important to make sure that we are earmarking our liability for every employee that comes to the district. So we're doing 2 of the things that they're recommending, and then we need to work on the other 2 things that they were recommending. I can't talk past 8 o'clock, just so you know. And hopefully in the future, if we need to do that, we can actually start working on those other 2 recommendations. So we're in really good shape. This is a report that we do every year. Every 3rd year, it goes into a lot more detail. This year, it was a lot more of a detailed report. Next year, you'll get an updated, not so detailed report. So it is something you will see on a continual basis. And it is something that does need to be brought to the board, and the board does need to approve the findings of the report. Any questions?
So the only one thing I didn't understand is when you say moving forward, earmarking the funds for new employees, you mean just tracking how much they'll cost year over year over year until they retire, and make sure we have that all set aside for them?
Well, that's something that the report actually does as well, but it's more of, we know when this employee comes in that they're gonna actually receive this benefit, so we should start putting the $3.50 a month that is that cost to that benefit towards that employee. And we don't do that right now, and it's because we have a negative obligation at this point. So it's not something I'm in a hurry to do because it's quite a lot of record keeping and timekeeping.
Okay, interesting. All right, anybody else have any questions? Okay. So what's next here? So that is,
well,
oh, so we actually, we need a motion to, oh, Matt, are you talking? Oh, are you moving, Matt?
Yeah, I think we need a motion
yes.
to move that we accept the findings of this report.
Seconded.
Thanks, Jeff. And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. Okay, so moving on to 11.
Aye.
Thanks, Matt. 11.3. Resolution 2021-01, new district boundaries as a result of our territory transfer.
Julie, this is a resolution that was recommended by John Tudor that the board needs to pass. We actually had this language included in a previous resolution that we brought to the board in June regarding the election. He said that that needed to be separated out. So this is on his recommendation.
Okay, so this is just a technicality then?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm losing my pages again. There we go. All right, great. So I'm just looking for a motion to go ahead and approve that resolution.
So moved.
Thanks, Jeff.
Second.
Indira, and all in favor?
Second.
Aye.
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 Great. Okay, 11.4 is 2021-02 developer fee.
Okay. 11.4.
Am I pausing too now?
There's a delay of some sort.
Huh. Did you hear me say that? So we're on 11.4.
So this is a resolution as a result of our public hearing. The resolution is the board saying that it is okay to increase the level 1 developer fees for the district, and that there's a 60-day period before we can set those fees in motion.
Great. So if there's no questions, I'm just looking for a motion to go ahead and approve resolution 2021-02.
So move.
Second?
Second?
I'm taking Jeff on that. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay. 11.5. So I just want to backtrack a little bit so we remember why we were doing this. So I just want to remind everybody that when we do a board resolution, it's usually a formal document that makes a statement about an issue that's so important to the board that we want to have a record of it. So in light of what's been happening in society, Black Lives Matter, a lot of things that are going on, Aaron took a very active approach to put together a resolution on where we stood as a district. So we brought that to the last meeting, and I appreciated the swiftness of it because I do think that's something that we should have addressed pretty quickly. However, now we got into a little bit more discussion of it, and then we gave it to Trustee Galindo, who wanted to add a little more to it. And so now we're bringing back his version of it for us to, I guess, comment on if we, yeah, at this point, I don't know what's better, to go into marks and make some discussion and ask some questions, or to maybe.
Hey, Julie,
Yeah, go
if I may, I very much appreciate you saying that, because Black lives do matter. And thank you, because some people can't say that for some odd reason. And I would like to add that that the first resolution is in the second resolution as well. And so I'm open to any grammatical punctuations or anything that needs to be resolved, or the discussion. This resolution is supported by local data. And I just, our students matter too. The deficiencies are there. And thank you, Julie, for saying that, very much so.
So what you're saying, Mark, I just want to make sure I reiterate, you're saying that the original content in the district's statement is contained within this bigger one that you wrote yourself. So at this point, I think now we have to have everybody agree on a version. So do you think that we should, Matt, did you want to say something? Sorry, I could see your light going on.
Yeah, well, I have a proposal if the board will support it. In the proposal, it unfortunately will require delaying to our next regular meeting to adopt this resolution. But I think if the board appoints a subcommittee, which I would recommend, it consists of me and Mark, without changing the content, just clean it up a little bit and present it at the next meeting.
No, I'm fine with that. Yeah, so you guys get together and put it together, and if anybody had any specific feedback, why don't we go ahead and give it to you? Because I read a few things that I probably would retool a little bit. I think Indira might have some comments, Jeff. So if we have some retooling, just submit it to you guys, and you guys will put it together and clean it up for the next meeting.
That would work for me, yeah.
Yeah, I got no problem with that. Just again, this is supported with local data, and this is very similar to other resolutions in districts that have identical challenges that our students have. Yeah, please.
Okay, perfect. So I think that's great. Go ahead, Indira, I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm very much in favor of revising some of the language in this, the second proposed resolution. So I agree with Matt that it needs work. So I'll go for it. If we can give some time and appoint people who will be looking into it and working on it.
Perfect.
Just so we're clear, please specify what language so that way we're all made aware of. Because this,
And Julie, that should be done at this meeting. You know, you can give the committee recommendations, but yeah, they need to verbalize what some of the suggestions are.
In this public meeting right now?
Yeah, just to give.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so if I would have to pull mine back up, but yeah, Indira, do you want to talk a little bit, give a little bit of feedback on some of the things?
Absolutely. First, I want to, comment that, in the second page, the part about talking about the district collaborating using a whole child, whole family, whole community approach towards supporting student success and moving families, that, that paragraph is super important, and I really, commend you, Mark, for putting that in there. However, there is, a couple of paragraphs where the first time I read them were like, oh my gosh, are we back to the 60s on this? Especially in the first page where it's talk about racially segregated school environments. To me, it was a shock to read something like that, and talking about the majority, over 80% of our students being students of color. I'm talking about segregating classrooms. Are we talking about segregated classrooms or segregating students within the same racial ethnic group, or what are we talking about here? To me, it's very confusing. That's what I understood right away. So that's one example. I can pinpoint a couple more where it's really painting a picture that is, I don't feel is accurate for a district like ours.
I can see how that would be troubling, and so our closest neighbor is St. Helena. Our towns are very similar in the makeup of the people there, but it is not similar in the makeup of the student body of the districts. And so we do have a segregated campus here at 80% Hispanic, though our city population doesn't reflect them numbers. It reflects a different number, more similar to St. Helena's school district. And the towns are very similar in nature. So I would also like to note that Marin County in 2019 was forced to desegregate for a lot of these same reasons. The opportunities were different at the school on the other side of the tracks. And the funny thing is, it was literally that wasn't on the side of the tracks. And so they were forced to desegregate in 2019. And I would love to see if there's any similarities in our county here, because the demographics of our school doesn't reflect the demographics of our city, nor does it reflect the demographics of our closest neighbor, whose city demographics are very similar to ours. And so it could be supported. I feel it is supported, but that's a discussion for the whole board.
So Julie, what will be the next?
Yeah, Erin, I'm at a loss of what's the next step. I mean, I think we could talk about this for a long time if we all want to have our own, input onto it.
Yeah, you just need to give that committee a little bit of direction so that both Mark and Matt know, what you want reflected in that resolution as a board.
Well, I think one thing to be important to remember is we're just talking about our school right now, right? Yeah. We're just talking about Calistoga Joint Unified School District. Right. I don't like to ever look at what other people are doing. I want to write a resolution that is our commitment to what we want to do for our children, right? So I don't really understand where the other stuff plays in. we want to make a really holistic resolution about how we want to approach equity, right? And definitely there's lots of stuff we could add in there.
I agree, Juliet, and I didn't come up with the phrase white flight. That was brought to me by some of our community members, and it is still a trend. I could roll off 3 families just without even giving it much thought that have removed their kids from our to neighboring districts because of their concerns. And if not that it's forced segregation, but it's 80% of our students. That is not the makeup of our town. That's nor our parents, and so it's supported. I feel it's supported, but again, this was my. I looked at a bunch of different resolutions. I looked at our local data, and these concerns, the academic achievement, it isn't hidden. It is in our school SARC report, as well as the dashboard and all that. The inequities, the disparities, the inequities in our, as we address equity, it isn't, no, I'm not making that up, that the disparities and inequities exist on our campus.
I think I'm kind of confused because I hear you talking about equity and then I hear you bringing up this other subject of white flight, and I don't know how that has to do with.
So it's a form of segregation, and we're talking on equity, but and this is why it's important to have the cultural responsive training, cultural sensitivity training, because a lot of people don't understand these things. But this isn't new conversation. This is old conversation for larger school districts that have been enduring these inequities. And Calistoga hadn't always been that way. It turned that way in 10, 15 years, maybe not even that long, but it is. And we are known as the Brown School. And we should embrace that, but as well, we should address some of the inequities and disparities that exist in our campus that fall along racial lines. And that is in our SARC report, very blatant. It is very evident in our SARC report. And so I feel a resolution that would address these inequities and disparities and try to bridge the gap where our families don't want to send their kids elsewhere. And one example is the English, the Spanish dual immersion classes. One thing that they've realized from the dual immersion, not to get off equity, but that it is beneficial to the white families for them to learn Spanish as well. And they found that the majority of the families that want their kids in these are tended to be white families, so that way their kids could have an additional language. That being said, these equities and inequities should be addressed in our equity resolution. And that's what that's.
Okay. Well, at this point, I think, I mean, Aaron, you tell me if you think I'm right or wrong, but perhaps we need to pull all of us aside in a little special, I don't know. To me, I think it would almost be better if we started out with kind of giving Mark and Jeff some of our feedback and maybe get it to a point where it's more workable and then have another discussion. What do you think?
Yeah, they can draft something and bring it back again at the next board meeting.
How do you feel about that, Mark? Do you feel like that might be a good way for us to kind of come to you with some little, suggestions? And
so back to of course I'm open for anything that addresses these issues. I would hope that we could talk about it soon, so that it might be able to be put in that next meeting that we got scheduled before our next month's meeting, just so that these inequities could be addressed by our administrators. But then again, I'm open just as long as we address these issues.
Okay. And by address the issues, you mean put forth a descriptive resolution of where we stand as a district?
Yes, and
That's what this is. This is a statement that we're resolving as a district?
Absolutely. And I didn't come about this. I did a lot of research. I looked at a lot of different districts that are that have this identical inequities, disparities that our students face in math and English language, the English learners, the migrant students, the students of color. And so I'm open. Let's tackle this together. I mean, because that is our scarlet letter on all our reports, all the data. Ask our principals, ask our administrators. It just is there. It's actual.
Well, since it is a living document that represents us all, let's all go back and since Mark said generally Aaron's is contained within his, let's just work with his draft and put in any feedback that we have about things that we feel comfortable as a board collectively. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. So we'll have Paula put together a little due date for it. And then hopefully, like Mark said, we can get it back before this next special session.
So I would like to, as Matt pointed out, I feel that committee is very much necessary, just so that we can all, the committee can report out, because as it was previously mentioned, so your jobs take away from maybe time that you might be able to put into something as important as an equity resolution. Let the committee put in that time, so that way you're not troubled with doing something as substantial as this.
Well, now, Mark, I want to clarify that, because I feel like you're taking things out of context. Here, nobody is saying that it's not important. It's super important, but we have to be very clear about the message that we are sending. And no, this is one of the things that whatever time it takes to get it right, I'm willing to put the time on it. So please do not try to change the meaning of words here. I know okay, so this is super important. Let me just make it really, really clear.
I absolutely agree. And 4 years time failing to address these issues, I feel time is of the essence. So that way we don't have another senior class going out without addressing the issues. I'm saying that we should expedite the process in any legal form that we can in regards to open session.
So moving forward, Mark, would you rather have us all come together and work through it one more time, or do you want us to give some feedback and have you and Matt work on it a little bit and then come back together? What do you feel comfortable with?
I feel comfortable with getting all your information, all your input, because we were all placed here by our community, and so your opinions, your thoughts, please bring it. But have it substantiated and backed up with data, because I have mine backed up with data.
Okay. So Aaron, should we table this and come back together all as a group? How do you advise us to?
What my understanding is that Matt and Mark are going to work on a draft and bring it back to you at the next board meeting.
Okay, but that we're going to submit any issues we have with how it stands right now.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard from Indira, yes.
Okay, then we will move forward in that direction. Thank you, Matt and Mark, for taking that on to bring it back to us in a format that we can all agree on. Okay, we're good there. So we're going to go ahead and table that for the next meeting. And then we move on to 11.6, establishing an additional regulatory scheduled board meeting.
So we need to establish a second board meeting in September. And as it was explained on the action item there, we have a learning accountability and attendance plan. We have to have a public hearing as well as an adoption, and they have to be separate meetings. So we're suggesting that we meet again on September 21st at 6:00 p.m. if all the trustees are available.
Is everybody okay with that date?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Then I would just look.
I move that we schedule the meeting at post.
Second.
Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That day was the 15th of September?
21st.
21st.
Oh, yeah, I have, yeah, aye. Apologies.
Matt, maybe you need to piggy onto my Wi-Fi.
You might be close enough.
Yes.
I guess I do.
You might as well run an extension cord while you're at it.
I'm paying good money here.
Okay, so moving on to 11.7, we're going to go ahead and take action on the board policies listed there. And they are basically updated to reflect current law, regulations, and district practices. So if there's no questions on those, because we covered them at the last meeting, I would look for a motion to go ahead and approve those.
Actually, Julia, I just need to make a correction. We did not bring BP 0470
Right, sorry.
or the uniform complaint procedures before. I'm bringing these to you now because they have been recently updated and we have to distribute those soon to both staff and parents. So we cannot wait until the September meeting to approve them.
Okay, sorry. So yeah, and those are strictly regulatory. We followed what they.
That's correct.
Okay. So if anybody doesn't have questions on those, then we'll go ahead and look for a motion to approve them.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then 12.1, board meeting calendar. So we're gonna have 2 meetings in September, the 14th and the 21st. Do we want to still do them Zoom style?
Julie, at this point we need to because we can't have large groups yet. So in order to be transparent, we need to make sure we're using Zoom.
Okay, perfect. So 14th and 21st. Sorry, it said it on the thing, so I thought I had to ask. All right. And then 12.2, tentative future agenda items. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of them, but as of right now, we've got our yearly sufficiency of instruction materials. And 12.3, we do not need to reconvene the closed session.
Hey, Julie, I had one, I know we got a big, I'm sorry, we got a big calendar coming up. But I just noticed that on October 5th, our culturally responsive training is so close to the October 12th, which happens to be Indigenous People Day. And we don't celebrate that at our district, at our schools. And I feel that that is necessary because Calistoga was inhabited before the settlers came over, the Wapo tribe. And also the chair of the Wapo tribe, Agustin Garcia, his family member, one of his nieces graduated last year. He is the chair of the Wapo tribe and has offered to bring dancers if we ever decided to celebrate Indigenous People Day. I think that would be a great learning experience for our students in regards to history and social justice, social equity. I mean, all lives matter. Indigenous people lives matter. I feel maybe we should recognize this day as a district. And I would like to have that discussion if possible.
So do you mean recognize it in terms of taking off an instructional day from our calendar, or do you mean pushing something out to the students? Pushing something out?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Make it a learning experience. Absolutely.
Sure. And I think that obviously we can't have gatherings right now, so that's unfortunate. But maybe we could figure out, maybe you can just work with Michael on some ideas that maybe we could push out in terms terms of curriculum.
I think Indigenous people matter as well.
Right. Thank you, Mark. Great. So I'll let you push out to Michael any ideas we can do since we're still going to be virtual at that point. But the dancers might be a nice idea for the future when we finally get back to, I even hate to use that word normal, when we get back to life. Okay, anything else for anybody? Agenda, anything? Okay, then I'm looking for your favorite motion. Here comes Jeff.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Aye.